How we doing? And welcome back to my channel. My name is Ryan B. Hebert, and today I have a very special guest, Mr. Cortex VGC himself of the Twin Leaf Town Tyrannotars. Cortex, how we doing?
Hey, we're doing well. Thanks for having me, Ryan. Glad to be here.
Oh man, I'm so glad that you could join in this season and join us in the excitement that is the VBA Season 3. But more exciting than that, we've got a power ranking tier list for everybody today. I'm very excited. We've spent at least 2 to 3 hours in total over both divisions going at this thing.
Oh yeah, we've really taken our time here. You know, we've broken down each team, compared it to the other teams in the same division. So I'm excited to go through this.
Me as well. Well, without further ado, let's get started. Welcome. Let's begin. Take it away, Cortex.
All right, here we go. Starting with our methodology. So we just want to throw it out there that we're aiming for an unbiased ranking approach with our power rankings based solely on the teams compared to each other in their respective divisions. So we're just looking at the teams themselves, not the coaches or anything else. And I actually think it's helpful for me because I'm also new to the league, so I'm free from any bias towards any particular coach. So with that said, we can continue. Oh, so one thing I would like to note is that our rankings and our power rankings also include the transactions that have been made. And so you'll see pictured here in the graphics, every team has been updated with each new transaction as far as I know.
Yeah. As at the time of this video right now, we have tried to make sure that we've included every major transaction teams have made in week 1. And there have been quite a few transactions, even a transaction from myself, which I didn't even make a transaction last season. So I felt this was a big step in the right direction. So first off, we've got the Kanto division because it's Gen 1, Gen Fun. We're gonna start out strong here. So coming in at number 12, we've got the Latchkey Kids. I know people bully. I believe Fifth Leaf is the manager for this team. And you know what, Cortex, if you don't mind, I'll take this one.
Oh yeah, go take it away.
So there's a lot to see here. There's a lot to play with, but let's get to the facts, folks. Overlapping typings with Obstagoon and Tyranitar. You know, they're both great Pokemon. They both have different things going on for them, but like it's not a great start in my opinion. They're both powerful, but for 2 dark types on the team, both of them physical attackers. Not to mention, look at this team, Cortex. It is mostly physical attackers. You know, you've got Dracovish, you've got Obstagoon, Double, Tyranitar, Phalanx, Greedent. And then you've got a Gothitelle, you've got an Oranguru, right? Golbat as well, and then a Brionne, you know? So this team is heavily leaning towards physical attackers. You've got overlapping dark types. You've got a Dracovish on the team, and you know what? That's going to pair well with Sand Rush. But, I mean, not having Strong Jaw, I mean, it kind of sucks, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, Fish's Rend is still going to do a lot of damage. But then there's like a sort of semi-TR mode trying to be set up here with Oranguru. Shadow Tag with Gothitelle as well to trap Pokemon on the field. And then he's got an Drifblim on the team as well. But there's no way for Unburden to be procced by terrain because there isn't a terrain user on this team. So with that, we felt that, you know, you've kind of got like a semi-TR mode, but there's not too much that kind of threatens in that mode. You know, Greedent could definitely use Belly Drum and kind of power up that way. And Phalanx, I can't remember what the speed tier is for Phalanx. It's not very often that you see a Phalanx, Cortex.
Oh yeah. Phalanx. Yeah, if I remember correctly, I want to say Phalanx speed tier is around 70, 75. Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Tyranitar can arguably be run a little bit slower as well, but I don't know if that's what the Latchkey Kids want to be doing. And I think the biggest point that you brought up while we were talking about teams, Cortex, is you want to be bringing your tier 1s to almost every match every week because you paid the most for them. They're supposed to be some of the best Pokemon. I just actively can't see you wanting to bring a Dracovish and Trick Room. It's possible to slow it down, right? That's a thing. But if you're trying to run a TR mode and then run Dracovish with that as well, I don't know if you're going to be outspeeding things to really get the full effect of Fish's Rend. Now, Cortex, I want to leave it open to you just to mention anything that I might have left out here.
For sure, yeah. So I think you hit on, a lot of good points there. You can definitely run Iron Ball on Dracovish to slow it down and Trick Room. But I think what you mentioned was one of the biggest issues with the team that I saw, where there's a lot of repeated type, so a lot of physical attackers and a lot of repeated types and overlapping roles. So for example, you have Oranguru and Gothitelle. They're both Psychic type and they're both Trick Room setters, and they both, they aren't known for having huge damage. Drifblim and Golbat, there is some overlap there with them both getting Tailwind. Drifblim obviously doesn't have a terrain setter to go along with it. And then Double and Greedent are normal types that kind of have some overlap there. And then you got the Obstagoon and Tyranitar. So I think a lot of repeated types and roles. I think that's kind of the thing here is, spending both your tier 2s on Psychic type Trick Room setters. I would love for Latchkey Kids to maybe trade one of those off for a nice special attacker that can work in Tailwind or Trick Room. I think that this would bump up this team a little bit here. But yeah, some great points. I think that wraps it up for the Latchkey Kids.
It does. I'm excited to see what they do in the season. And hey, maybe they prove us wrong and they move up at the end of the season. Who knows? Up next, we've got the Island Dragons. Cortex, this is all you.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, and just want to piggyback off what you just said, and that these are just power rankings, so these are just teams ranking to each other. So any coach, can play well and can do well with the team, even if they're on the lower end of this list for sure. So yeah, with that said, Island Dragons, starting off with Dragapult, Dracozoa, Aerodactyl. I guess I don't have to go through all the mons since you have them right here. So one other common theme that we're going to be seeing with some of these low ranking teams is I think there is some overlap here with roles. So in this team, I think there's a lot of physical attackers, right? You have Dracozoa, Aerodactyl, Hippowdon, Sharpedo, Rapidash, Hitmontop, Delibird. You have a couple mons here that can act as special attackers. Dragapult can be special for sure. Dragalge special. Pincurchin can have Rising Voltage, and then you have Glaceon. And I think there's also this team. I think a lot of the mons are pretty frail. They do a lot of damage, but they can also be taken out in one hit. For example, like the Aerodactyl and the Sharpedo. I can see Sash being kind of a contested item here on Glaceon and Sharpedo and Aerodactyl. Even something like Dragapult is pretty frail. And then you have 3 dragon types, so that's a lot of weaknesses to opposing dragon type coverage moves. The 2 of the dragons share weaknesses to ice, and the other 2 dragons share weakness to ground. So I think a lot of common weaknesses here. I don't see too many options for defensive switching here. You have Hippowdon as a big pivot mon if you need it to. You have dragon types, but you also don't have like a fairy type and a steel type to kind of round out the defensive options there. And then you have a water type and a fire type, and no grass type to help tank in some of those grass or electric type moves. So I would love to see a little bit more variety on this team. And then I would just say in addition to that, you have a lot of slower mons like Pincurchin, Hippowdon, Dragalge, and Hitmontop. Even Glaceon is slower, but you don't have a Trick Room setter. So this team's main mode, I think, is Tailwind and just kind of powering through its opponent with Dracozoa and Dragapult. And then you have Hippowdon, which can set up Fake Out for Dragonance on Dragapult if you so wanted to. But I think what I would really love for this team is to have maybe a Trick Room setter, so you can utilize those slower mons better, since I'm not sure how well like Dragalge with its really base speed is going to be able to operate in something like Tailwind. So I think just a little bit more speed control, I think, is what kind of bumps this team down a little bit for me. Ryan, you have anything to add?
I think you hit it on the head. The number one thing I wanted to say was half of this team is really slow, or has the capability to be in a slower mode. And without a Trick Room setter, you're kind of relying upon your opponent to kind of set Trick Room for you. And so, at times when I've built teams in the past, right, especially in VGC, I've always thought to myself, maybe I'll have 1 or 2 mons on my team just in case my opponent brings a slower Pokemon if the metagame is leaning towards that. This isn't VGC, Cortex. This is a Draft League. And so for Draft League, you've got a team of 11 Pokemon, so you've got a lot of slots for a lot of different options. And, almost every team is able to pick up a TR setter. This team, however, did not. And while some of these Pokemon can be standalone, we recognize that Hippowdon can be a win con on it in itself if set up correctly. Pincurchin in an endgame, when in a corner, can pull itself out. Electric terrain is huge. And, you know, there are some great parallels between the Dracozolt being an electric terrain, also having that sand stream from a Hippowdon if you wanted to run Sand Rush. But, of course, you lose that power spike from Hustle on Dracozolt. And, you know, other than that, you know, Pincurchin, Hippowdon, they're very slow. And in Pokemon, if you're either attacking after your opponent or if you're not able to attack, more than likely you're going to lose the game because that is how you win. You have to feint the opposing Pokemon. So at the end of the day, I would love to see a TR setter on this team too. Maybe they'll be able to make a trade, or maybe it's going to come through for them, Cortex. Maybe they don't need that TR setter. They'll face enough TR people, and those people will set up TR for them. So again, it's all going to come down to how this team plays and how they're able to operate. But with overlapping weaknesses, a lack of trick room, it's why we place them at number 11.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Yeah, and just to one more point, I was going to mention is those weaknesses. Right now, I'm seeing 3 weaknesses to rock, 1 4 times weak, only 2 resistances, and then 4 fairy resist and only 1 resistance. So yeah, definitely I think a little bit of a frailer team in terms of defensive coverage. We can.
Did you say 4 fairy resistances? Is that?
Oh, 4 fairy weaknesses.
Okay,
only 1
I
resist.
just wanted to double check. Yeah, because I was like, I'm pretty sure
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, up next here, we've got the Rebellion. You know what? I think I can take this one. I think I can do it.
Go for it, yes. Let's do it.
While we were going through our rankings, this was a team that I think I rated it pretty low, and you rated it a little bit higher than me, Cortex. But at the end of everything in our conversations, we eventually decided that, okay, this is where we want the team to be. So we recognize that Whimsicott Arcanine is a fantastic combination. Beat up with Justified on Arcanine. Arcanine has a wonderful pool of moves. Prankster Whim, one of the fastest Prankster users in the game, is able to get off a powerful Tailwind and outspeed your opponents like no other. But that can't be the whole team, okay? You got to have 6 Mons at the end of the day facing off your opponent. So looking at the rest of this team, you've got a Dragonite, Inteleon, Kangaskhan, Galvantula, Steelix, Skuntank, Togepi, and Grapploct, if I pronounced that correctly. You've got Fire, Water, Grass, which is really cool. You've got the Dragon Fairy and Steel. So, they're kind of like putting together these cores, which is really cool to see. But I don't think there's a solid Trick Room mode. Porygon, you can't rely on Porygon to use it if it even gets it. I'm not even sure. Does it get
It does, yes.
It does. Okay, so Porygon gets Trick Room. I know Whimsicott gets Trick Room. The two Mons right there that I'm gonna go out on a limb and say these are not the best Trick Room users in the world. Whimsicott can pull out a Trick Room and surprise your opponent, but that means that your Whimsicott has to live in front of your opponent, and so that's definitely a different story. But looking at this team, Dragonite's really cool because multi-skill and inner focus are great abilities, and so that's great thing to take advantage of. Inteleon's also great too, but I mean it's a glass cannon, and I think for this team, you've got some bulkier options in the back, and then at the same time, some really good offensive pressure. But at the end of the day, team cohesiveness was the biggest thing for me. I don't know if I see like a full cohesive team with the Rebellion. I see them bringing like the same 4 to 5 Mons on a week-by-week basis, and then maybe you mix it up. Togepi's great because it gets Follow Me, and that's super cool. Follow Me user, Fairy Follow Me user, awesome, good to see it. At the end of the day, the lack of a really solid Trick Room user is big for me because you've got some really great TR Mons. I think Skuntank, Steelix really take advantage of TR, and you can definitely get off some good damage with that Sheer Force Steelix. I think I've said my piece on this. Cortex, what have I left out? Please.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I think you hit definitely the biggest parts of it. A couple things I would add are, for the Trick Room mode, I think you have a couple ways to get it up. Either Togepi alongside Whimsicott or Porygon, or Kangaskhan's Fake Out alongside, one of the respective Trick Room setters. That being said, I don't think you can really abuse Trick Room as well as some other teams. Yeah, you have Steelix as your main sweeper, and then you can make Grab Block work in there. Maybe Skuntank. You can drop the speed of something like Arcanine or Dragonite as well. But I think in the end, you're just not going to be able to get enough, I think, out of your Tricker mode as a lot of the other teams that we saw who just have Mons with higher attacking or special attacking stats and a lower base speed to be able to use that. So I don't think that the Tricker mode is as fully fleshed out as it could be, since in order to set up Tricker, you often have to use some less than optimal choices in either Togepi for redirection or Porygon or Whimsicott to set the Trick Room. I think there are some cool things that you can do with, Dragon Dance, Dragonite next to Togepi or Kangaskhan to help you set up. And also, I think for the Tailwind mode, because Whimsicott, one of its main roles is going to be for that Tailwind, is I'm not sure that, you have that immediate firepower that you really want out of your 3 turns of Tailwind. Dragonite really likes to set up first. It doesn't have, as high of an attacking stat as some other, pseudo legend dragons or Metagross or T-Tar. I think it is still 130, but you don't have like a huge nuke move like like Draco Meteor from Dragapult or Salamence. And then I also think that Arcanine and Inteleon does have Hydro Pump. It can blast through some opponents, but I think that while this team does have good options and it does have the speed control options, I think that they could be a little bit more fleshed out to be able to take advantage of them better.
Okay, up next, we've got the Gardner Guzzlords. Cortex, take it away.
Yeah, Gardner Guzzlords. All right, so we got Sand. Sand is incredibly strong for sure. Oh, and I do want to point out that one transaction that this team made was they ended up picking up Bravery. I believe they had Mantine before, and I think that's, while you don't have a water type anymore, you have Gliscod. I think that Braviary is a really strong addition to this team because this team has a lot of physical attackers, and the addition of Braviary actually bumps this team up quite a bit for me just because that Defiant ability is going to help protect its physical attackers. You're not going to be incentivized to bring Intimidate and Cycle Intimidate so much against this team anymore now with that Braviary in there, especially when you have some things to protect it like the Hitmonchan's Fake Out and the Togetex Follow Me. So this team does have a lot of physical attackers, but I think Braviary it can be fine. Excadrill can also set up, so that's pretty cool. You have Togetic, and then you have a Tricker mode with Mr. Rhyme to be able to set that, along with Gigalith and the Mag, potentially Golisopod or Flareon, Maractus as well. Braviary does get Tailwind, which I think this team previously had before Mantine, but I think Braviary is a little bit better in setting Tailwind. And so I think this team has some reasonable speed control options. While Braviary and Mr. Rhyme are not the the best users of their speed control options, I think they're pretty solid. So yeah, I do like this team. Stoutland, can be run Sandrush or Intimidate. I think that the Maractus pickup in Tier 5 was incredible value for this team just because it really does a lot, I think, to protect the Excadrill, the Gigalith, and the Flareon from those water-type moves. So I think that's going to be really, really strong for them to be able to just have that, even in Team Preview or, if you lead Excadrill, Gigalith, already you got to be fearful from a Maractus switching from the back. So I think that's a pretty smart strategy on their end. I do think that, this team's got the Fire, Water, Grass and the Fairy Steel Dragon cores. So I think it's pretty solid. What prevents it from, I think, rising a little bit higher is, like I mentioned before, it is more based on physical attackers. The only, special attacker that really I see is Mr. Rhyme. Maractus can do some as well. But yeah, other than that, you have pretty much physical attackers. So something like Reflect or Charm is going to be able to get past the Defiant. Yeah, Ryan, you have anything to add?
Absolutely. I think Braviary is a huge pickup. Thank goodness I don't have to face him in week 1. I'm really excited to Cycle Intimidate in front of this team. I'm telling you. It's going to be a good time. But jokes aside, I think you hit the nail on the head, man. Once again, team is looking really physically offensive, and there are a lot of great physical attackers. But it is lacking on the special attacking side, and I think it's sad to hear that Mr. Rhyme is one of your best special attackers. Even Maractus, too. I think I would really like to see some variety on that side of things. But you know what? At the end of the day, the Gardner Guzzlords are going to be able to pummel their opponents with this really oppressive sand mode, because getting weather on your team in a draft league like this is a really big deal. And so I give him the credit for being able to have Excadrill Gigalith as a combo. Also picking up Stoutland as a, either Intimidate or Sand Rush user is also fantastic as well. So I'm excited to see what they're able to do in the league. It's going to be a good time. But at the end of the day, you've got, they had Man Team before and they have Braviary now. I think they're both kind of in the same tier for me when it comes to using Tailwind. They're not the fastest users of Tailwind. It's sort of like Mandibuzz, but Mandibuzz is bulkier, man. Mandibuzz can take a hit. Braviary can also take a hit if statted correctly. Otherwise, one Rock Slide comes along and it's going to really ruin your day. So I'm excited to see what they do with this team. But at the same time, I think there are a couple things holding it back from truly making it shine and move up in power rankings at the moment.
Yeah, well said, Ryan. And with that, we can move on to the next team. Number 8, we got the... okay, Ryan, you're going to have to remind me how to say this name. So, funny, before we were talking on this video, Ryan asked me to pronounce this name, and I said I called it the Worcester Stunfest. And now I know better.
It's not. You know better now. It's really a trap. For anyone out of New England.
Worcester, am I saying?
Worcester Stunfest, baby.
Worcester
I'm headed
Stunfest.
to Worcester. Second largest city in Massachusetts, and the name is incredibly hard to pronounce if you're not from here. So I don't blame you. If you were over the pond, it could be Worcester for sure. But sadly, there is no CH right now. So it's fine. Anyways, looking at this team, we placed this team mid-tier because we felt that there are some really solid options when it comes to speed control. Just right off the bat, you've got Galewing's Talonflame, almost guaranteeing you a Tailwind with fake-out users like me and Chow, or Redirection from Amoonguss. On top of that, you've got Malamar and Jellicent for Trick Room, which two fantastic bulky Pokemon that can take a hit.
Claydol too.
And Claydol too with Levitate. Oh my goodness. Like, you've got some fantastic ways to set up Trick Room. You've got some great abusers of Trick Room as well that really do appreciate either getting under Trick Room and trying to do some damage right away, or you can take that contrary route with Malamar and start hitting him with close combat or superpower, right? I think it's superpower. I'm trying to remember the move.
Superpower, yes.
Superpower, sir. Yeah. You keep hitting him with superpower and raise your attack stat. It's great. Exploud is an offensive powerhouse for the tier that it's in, and it can do huge damage with a choice item or even a normal type move boosting item for Boom Burst. It's great. Not to mention that they've taken the second Snow Warning user in the format, Vanillix. And Vanillix is really interesting because it's a great special attacker. It's it is a glass cannon at its core. But it can set up Aurora Veil as well and get you that wonderful double screens, or Aurora Veil as people like to say, to give your team that extra oomph of protection. And that can really make all the difference. And so you've got great speed control options on this team. You've got a hail option, and then you've got some pretty solid Pokemon to do stuff with. Now, I think one of the setbacks of this team is, yes, there are a couple Pokemon. I think Jellicent with Water Spout can be really impressive. I think Malamar over time can be really impressive. And obviously, Amoonguss can put stuff to sleep. Rage Powder attacks away from you. But how many Pokemon on this team, Cortex, are really like out of the gate once Trick Room gets up, are like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to town? I think
not too much. Yeah, not too much out of the gate. I think this is more of a grindier team. So I think you hit the nail on the head on this one.
For sure. At first glance, the team doesn't look like it does too much, right? I think you've got some solid mons and some solid setup. But once you are set up, that's where this team really shines. And I think that's what's going to take the Worcester Stunfists all the way to the finals of this league. If they are able to, week after week, control the rate of the game with the speed control. I think that's where they're going to go good. And that's why we have them at number 8. Cortex, did I miss anything?
Well said, Ryan. I just want to give a shout out to a couple synergies on their team.
Please do.
One of them Yeah, so this is already a really bulky team with multiple Intimidate users with Redirection, Regenerator as well, the double Regenerator, Benelux with the Roar Veil. And then, they can even do something like, go Lux, set up screens, and then have Luxray and Malamar. And then you have Luxray to drop the Intimidate, you have Malamar to raise its, attack and defense with superpower, and then you can you can use fake tears with Luxray on your own Malamar to boost the special defense by 2. So now you have a super powering special defense boosted Malamar, and that can run away with the game if you're not prepared. So yeah, some cool synergies coming out. And for their Tailwind mode, I would love to see, like you said, a little bit more immediate firepower to be able to use that better. For your Tailwind mode, you have like Jellicent with Water Spout. You can maybe use X-Blout or Venilux with Blizzard and Mienshao. But yeah, I think you covered pretty much everything.
Sweet. Well, let's move on. Los
Awesome.
Angeles Weasels. Go for it, Cortex.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm looking at this team and I'm looking at the first mods, and it's looking very, very strong. Incineroar, Politoed, Kingdra, Delmice with the Scavalier and Rain. That looks, busted already. And then I get to some of these later picks down the road, like Sliggoo and Munchlax. Fungus has some utility for sure. And, I think Gothorita really works on the team well with trapping for weather control and trapping for Perish with Politoed and Incineroar pivoting. You got double fake out there as well. Triple fake out with Raichu. Raichu really helps the rain mode a lot with Lightning Rod. So I think that's a core. And I think you mentioned this earlier, like a team that will consistently want to bring the same like four mods or so every week. And I can see that being a trend with this team. I think every week I think Kingdra, Politoed, and Incineroar is probably like too strong not to bring every single week.
Oh yeah.
And then you can probably switch it up with a Scavalier, Delmice, depending, maybe Raichu, Trick Room if you need it. You have Belly Drum Linoon in there, which, you have triple fake out to help set it up, as well as redirection with the Fungus. Sliggoo I can kind of understand with the hydration and the sap sipper to absorb some of the grass moves. But I don't think, I don't really see Sliggoo, doing a whole lot, once it's out in the field. Same for Munchlax as well. I know you can, I'm not sure if Munchlax gets Belly Drum like Snorlax does, but I know Linoon does, and I feel like I'd rather go for Linoon, Belly Drum, and E-Speed every time over that anyway. But yeah, I think that this team is very strong with its couple modes that it has, but I think that I remember we mentioned this when we were talking about this team, is I feel like it would be easier to prep for this team over time, because I think that this team is going to be wanting to do similar things every week. I don't know how much you can change it up, because Incineroar, I feel like it's got a couple sets that are just so strong that you're going to be wanting to continuously run them week after week, right? Like you always pretty much want to run Fake Out, Party and Shot. And then the rest of the moves are up to you, whether you want to run Darkest Lariat or Taunt or Roar or something like that. But Incineroar, you can you already know what it's going to do. Politoed, it's got, I feel like, the same tools that you can expect to be running. Scald, Muddy Water, Helping Hand, Icy Wind, maybe Hydro Pump, Perish are probably the range of moves that you'd expect it to run. Then Kingdra, you got your Water, your Dragon Stab, Hurricane maybe. So I just feel like this team, while it does the couple things that it does really well, would be that being the brain mode, the pivoting with the fake out mons, and then a potential trick room mode. I think that it is, it's definitely very strong, but I think it's what prevents it from rising a little higher on this list is I think that it'll be easier to prepare for and see come in, because you'll know kind of what the mons will be doing. I'm willing to be proven wrong, and maybe the coach for this team will pull some wacky sets and run away with some wins with some unexpected sets. But that's what we came up with when we were talking about this team. Did I miss anything, Ryan? Anything you want to add?
It was well said, as always. I think the one thing that I want to mention is that, yes, we're going to see the same 4 to 5 mons every week, but Gothorita, Fungus, and Sliggoo, right? 3 Pokemon that could benefit greatly from the use of Eviolite. How many times are you going to see them overlapping in a single week? Like, yeah, you could give a Sash to Gothorita and maybe an Eviolite to Fungus to have on the same team for a week of play, but I think these three Pokemon are fighting for the same item in order to get some use. Maybe you disagree with me on that, Cortex, but I don't see a lot of variability when it comes to using mons that are not at their full evolution, just due to the nature of the draft. So
Yeah, no, 100% agreed with you. Yeah, multiple mods in contention for Eviolite and in contention for Focus Sash. Like
Yeah.
Raichu wants the Focus. Raichu wants the Focus Sash too,
that's
right?
right.
But then,
That's right. Yeah.
yeah, but then you can't run Sash on Fungus or Gothorita, you know. So yeah, definitely some item competition there.
We'll have to see as things play out, but I think this team is going to be strong, and so
Yeah.
the coaches should be watching out because do not underestimate Rain and do not
Oh yeah,
underestimate
yeah.
a end game Perish Song.
Oh yeah, Rain can sweep it out. All they need to do is take 2 quick KOs and click Perish with Poly, and you've lost the game, right? So I think
Yep.
something to really prepare for, even if you see it coming. And that doesn't take anything away from how powerful it can be.
Beantown Binacles. Now, we've had our qualms with Cinderace. Cortex and I have gone back and forth about how this Pokemon isn't as good without Max. And I think everyone has said that about Cinderace. But looking at the rest of this team, I think there's a lot of strong stuff to it. And it's why we're placing it at number 6. Gudra, and it's an offensive special defensive tank. Give it an assault vest and it's not going anywhere. It's a physical tank as well. It's fantastic. Its ability Sap Sipper, sucking up those grass type attacks so that Poliwrath is able to just kind of do its thing. Pelipper is able to do its thing if you get a cool swap in with Gudra. Now, Kofagrigus is a fantastic Trick Room setter. And Pelipper, I mean, giving you Rain, one of the other Rain setters in this format, it is a Tailwind user. It gets some fantastic special attack as well. Can also tank a hit as well. So it's got a lot of stuff going for it. Copper Jaw, you know, it's not something that I've seen in VGC that often, but in a draft league like this, a Sheer Force Steel user, I mean, come on. It's going to be doing some big damage.
It's gonna be good, yeah. Big
It's going to
damage
be good.
for sure.
It's going to be good. Just looking at the team as a whole, you've kind of got a rain mode.
Yeah,
going on.
that's immediate damage and impact for you right there.
Yeah.
The Copperage on the Marrow.
Absolutely. Well, in Trick Room, right? In
And
Trick
Trick
Room.
Room, yeah.
And so you've got, right, that's number 1. That's mode number 1. Mode number 2 has got to be the Swift Swim mode in Rain. And, you know, Cortex, you were telling me at first how you didn't like the Armaldo and Poliwrath, and then I pointed out Armaldo is not a water type. It's a bug rock type, and then that's when everything changed.
Different type.
Different
type
typings.
coverage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think that mode's really solid. You know, that's a really immediate impact mode too, right? Right out of the gate, you're fast and you can do a lot of damage.
Yeah, so this team is going to be really offensive when it comes to Trick Room. It's going to be offensive when it comes to its Rain mode. And then on top of that, you've got a Cinderace with Sucker Punch, changing its typing with Librero. It's great hidden ability that has really changed the game for Cinderace. You've got Gudra to kind of just slap onto a team and be like, yep, this is my Dragon type that can just keep unlocking damage. And it can be physical or special too, which is really cool with Gudra. You know, I feel like you could play around with Thwacky Gudra a little bit there and Grassy Surge as well. And maybe just kind of feed Gudra some grass type attacks and just kind of go to town. So this team has quite a few different modes going for it. And a fantastic tier 5 pick with Rapidash Galar. You know, it's sort of like Cinderace in the same vein where not all of its attacks have 100% accuracy. But when they do hit and when they do land, they do big damage. And Pastel Veil isn't a bad ability as well. So it's a nice looking team. Cortex, what did I miss?
Yeah, you hit a lot. I think what prevented this team from rising a little bit higher for me was the fact that their tier 1, their S pick was Cinderace. And if you look at the team, their main modes are Trick Room, which is a very solid fleshed out Trick Room mode. I like their Trick Room mode a lot. And their Swift Swim, you know, Tailwind mode as well. He can do some Disc Quake stuff with Marowak and Rotom Suit too, so that's pretty cool. But you got to ask yourself, how does Cinderace fit into those? Because I think one of the points that I mentioned was, you know, you really want to be bringing your tier 1 every single week. And I think this team only has Cinderace as a tier 1 pick, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think you really want to be maximizing your tier 1 usage every single week, right? Because that's going to be your highest impact one. That's the most expensive one on your draft. You want to be getting some good value out of that. And so with the Trick Room mode, I think it is a little harder to slot Cinderace if you're running a Trick Room game plan. And it's a little harder to slot on your Swift Swim Rain mode just because, one of your main stab attacks in Pyro Ball is not going to be able to gain its full effect from that. And with Trick Room, you know, you want to be, let's say you're running Trick Room, you probably want to be bringing something like Coffagrigus, and then some combination of Copperage and Marrow, Armaldo, Poliwrath, Gudra. And then, you know, you can bring Cinderace maybe in the back or as a lead to exert some pressure. But I think it does have some, you know, contention there with that mode. So that's the one thing for me. But other than that, yeah, good looking team.
Well said, Cortex.
Yeah, Greedy Greninjas. Cool. So I think this team has got a lot of powerful, good synergies going on. Something that sticks out immediately to me is the Scythe Spam version. NDD plus Starmie looks to be pretty powerful. You also got Unburdened Slurpuff. You can also go Follow Me Togekiss alongside Belly Drum Citrus Slurpuff to immediately get a +6 attack and proc Unburden. So that seems pretty good.
God
you also
damn.
got the Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that can just run some holes through your team if you're not prepared for it. You got Dragon Dance, Flygon. You got, you know, you could even run Fake Out Shiftry to help out with some setup there. You could even set up with Togekiss. I think Togekiss really enables a lot of what this team's got going on too. This team's got a wide variety of type coverage synergies, as well as defensive typing. It's got, you know, I think the typing's really good on this team. I think my one critique with this team is that although it does exemplify a lot of the types, you know, there's a good representation here. I do think that a lot of these mons are more on the fragile side. So I think this team does lack, you know, a lot of the bulk. I think while it can put a lot of offensive pressure out from the get-go, I think that if they get caught in a bad lead, I think it'll be a little trickier to find, you know, a switch in that's going to be able to put them in a better position. That being said, they do have Aegislash and they do have Togekiss, so that I know those can be some good defensive pivots if they need. But the rest of the mons do look pretty frail. Yeah, but I do like a lot of what they got going on. They got a Trick Room option with Audino and NDD with Aegislash. The Trick Room mode, I want to say it's maybe just for more reversing Trick Room than anything. I don't know if they would really use Trick Room to sweep per se. And then they don't have, you know, as far as I can see, a great way to get speed control on the fast end either. I can see maybe an Electroweb or a Nuzzle from the Jolteon. You know, they don't have Tailwind, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Ryan, you see it? Yeah, I don't see Tailwind anywhere. You know, there are a lot of powerful and setup options. Slurpuff, you know, is like probably the fastest thing that they have with Unburden. But yeah, I think those would be my critiques for the team. You know, kind of more frail side, and then, you know, maybe not as many speed control options, which I think is pretty big. They do have terrain though, which is cool. Ryan, yeah, you got anything to add?
I think you said it pretty nicely. A lot of frail attackers, but you know what? They are attackers, and so they can put out the pressure. Psychic terrain is a big aspect of this team. When you have it in DD, male or female, doesn't matter. Obviously, they both do different things, but in this case, psychic terrain is probably your best friend. Having a terrain on a team in a draft like this with no legendaries whatsoever, I think is really good, really unique, and puts you in a different position than some other teams. Anyone with Rillaboom, Pincurchin, and DDs, and then no one's going to be running Galarian, Galarian Weezing with Misty Terrain, I don't think, because Neutralizing Gas is just that good. But overall, I think the team has a lot of potential. I think I didn't hear you mention Sweet Veil on Slurpuff either. Both of its abilities are really good. So they are
pretty strong ability.
Yeah, if they see that someone is going to spam sleep, it's like, okay, Sweet Veil, you know? So that's really, really cool. And it's also scary to not know whether or not they want to try to block your sleep, or if they're going to, you know, belly drum and then pop and burn it. So it's kind of a toss-up, and they have a lot of options to do a lot of things. So Greedy Greninjas, super cool. You're number 5. Hope to see you do well because we're putting you up in the top 5. So, up next,
You got the Springfield Spoinks.
Springfield Spoinks.
That-
I'm not going to talk about myself. Cortex, you can do this. You can do this, man.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so I think that your team has a lot going for it. I think it's got both good defensive and offensive options. I think it's got some immediate damage options, and I think it's got some great defensive tools. We got multiple methods of speed control with Tailwind and Trick Room, and even some other stuff like Icy Wind can be utilized. So I think, let's just go through the beginning here. So one thing that I know people have talked about a lot in some other videos is the combination of having both Gyarados and Salamence as your tier 1s.
Kills me every
And
time.
I think, a lot of people have said, okay, these Pokemon are similar types. They do similar things. How good are these, Pokemon together? Actually double Intimidate, is there some overlap and role there? And one thing that I want to remind everyone is that in a lot of top, VGC World Championship teams, double Intimidate is what, carried a lot of teams to the top 8. So, for example, 2018, the number 1 team by Paul Ruiz, you got Salamence and Incineroar. Number 2 team that year was Incin Lando. The team after that, Incin Lando. So, double Intimidate was on the top 4 teams for 2018. So, double Intimidate is definitely really solid because, just really weakens physical attackers. You can swap them out. And then I think in all the years that Salamence has been run, it's been run more of a special attacker. So for example, 2017, there were a lot of Salamences there in the top 8, a couple in the top 4. Paul Ruiz ran Salamence that year too. I think he ran a more special version as well. Mm-hmm. So I think, while Gyarados and Salamence do share, that flying type, I think that they can do definitely different things. Salamence, you can fire off powerful Draco Meteors, you can run Specs and Air Slash and Heat Wave and things like that. And Gyarados has a lot of supportive options as well. I mean, you can run Taunt, you can run Thunder Wave, you can set up with Dragon Dance. It's more of a setup mon, I think, than Salamence is. It gets a lot different coverage than Salamence gets. You have things like Power Whip and Ice Fang and Crunch and things like that. I mean, even Sajin used it, right, to win Worlds in 2014. So I think, although that was Mega Gyarados, he's still definitely a little different, but he still used regular Gyarados at times before Mega evolving. So I think Gyarados is a solid pick with Salamence. Okay, that being said, I really like that you got Weather Mode with Ninetales and Arctozolt. You can go really on defensive really early. Ninetales can set up Veil. I think Gallade covers. I like the Gallade pick because it covers the rock weakness that the team has. That being said, I think one of the weak points of the team is that it does have some weaknesses in types that come out, and I think one of those, while the Gallade and the Nidoqueen do cover the rock weakness, I think it still doesn't negate the fact that a lot of the mons are weak to rock, including the tier 2 ones. So I think having some common weaknesses on your tier 2 ones, you are a little bit more vulnerable to Rock Slide, especially when your Weather Mode is weak to Rock Slide as well. I think that might be a thing that you definitely got to watch out for. Got to give a shout out to the Solrock and the Lunatone based combo.
No way.
The Sun and the Moon. I think you have some options, to work with Trick Room, with Arctozolt and Shiinotic, and your Trick Room setter of choice. Although I think your other modes are probably definitely a lot stronger than that. You do have, I think, a good mixture of physical to special split. But I think when it comes to the rankings and what prevents this team from going a little bit higher is, as I think we'll start to see in some of these next teams, especially the next one. I think the next one just has very consistent ways to control the game.
I agree.
Through we're going to talk about it, in a bit. Through Tailwind and Trick Room, they have very, very reliable ways to always get those up no matter what. Whereas here, your methods, I think, for controlling the game can be stopped. The Aurora Veil can be stopped with opposing weather, or Fake Out. Mandibus can get taunted. Usually you probably won't be able to knock it out in one hit, but it can still be doubled up on, or it can be faked out or taunted. Same goes for Solrock and Lunatone. Not exactly the most consistent Trick Room setters. It's nothing like a Dusclops or a Cophagrigus or something like that. So I think those are the critiques that I would have for the team. But definitely a solid team, and I think it definitely deserves its spot here as a number 4.
Appreciate the kind words. I think the team has a lot going for it. That's just me. It's my own team, but it is not top 3. And we deliberated on this for quite a while when going to this next pick. So the Alexandria Arcanines, if you don't mind, I'll take this one.
Yeah, go for it, man.
At first glance, it does look like a collection of Mons, but as you take a closer look, you start to see the makings of what is an extremely oppressive team, fast and slow. And DD Female's ability to redirect any attack that is, a single target is always going to be an incredible aspect of that Pokemon. And it's huge for Pokemon like Marowak Alola, Aromatisse, Nidoking, and even Abomasnow. These are Pokemon that may not want to take a direct hit from like a Stomping Tantrum or a Flare Blitz or an Ice Beam, right? But if you're able to redirect those attacks and let those Pokemon stay on the field, they are going to cause havoc. But not only do those Pokemon cause havoc, but there are the supportive tools on this team in order to allow them to do so. Number 1 being Crobat. Literally almost impossible to stop. Like it is, with Inner Focus and Mental Herb, literally it is, unless you take it down before it attacks, if it's max speed 200, not many other things outspeed that, right? So with all of these things combined, it is guaranteed Tailwind. And that is crazy. And that is really, really cool. Not to mention that it gets Super Fang and it can crit with Cross Poison. And it gets some flying type attacks too. But like overall, it's a great Tailwind setter. I think it gets Taunt too, right?
It does get Taunt.
It gets Taunt too. It's fast, man. And that really helps for Nidoking. It's great for Stonejourner. Great for Berserker as well. Even Arctivish, they love
even Abomasnow.
Even Abomasnow. They like Tailwind.
Yeah.
If you can outspeed your opponent and get a powerful attack off first, boom. And then let's not forget Aromatisse with Aroma Veil. Like this is huge to have a wonderful Trick Room setter like Aromatisse at your disposal to be able to get up like a solid Trick Room because you have redirection. And let's not also forget Fake Out from Berserker. Fake Out from Liepard, right? There's so much supportive option for the oppressive options that exist, and there's an even split between attacking and special attacking mons here. So it's really like as you dig into this team, it's like holy crap, there's so much going for it, and that's why we were like, wow. The Springfield Spoinks do not deserve to be in the 3rd spot because the Alexandria Arcanines really have the potential to set up however they want to and kind of just go from there. Cortex, what did I leave out?
Yeah, I think you really did a great job giving an overview for that team. I think this team really comes together very nicely. I think it's very well built. You have your core attackers, Marowak, Nidoqueen, Arctivish, Stonejourner, and Abomasnow, and Berserker dealing damage. And the options to support that are fantastic. I think Crobat, guaranteed Tailwind. And then you also have like a pretty virtually guaranteed Trick Room setup too with NDD and Aromatisse. With a potential to, NDD's expanding force is already going to be strong. And in the back, you can have your choice of Marrow, Arcto without Slush Rush or Abomasnow. Berserker, really anything. I think all of these mons work well in Tailwind or Trick Room. I think, the only thing that I'm kind of questioning on the team is Rotom. I know it's a tier 5, so, I won't hark on that too much because I know options get limited once you get to tier 5 and you start to only see not fully evolved mons. So, I get the pick for the electric and the ghost coverage there, even though you have Marowak, the electric maybe. The one thing that I am also questioning for this team is the Liepard. I know, because usually, if you think about the leads that this team has, I'm thinking you either lean into the Tailwind mode or the Trick Room mode. And if you're leaning into the Tailwind mode, I don't know that you necessarily bring like Liepard Crobat, right? I'm thinking you just go Crobat and then lead something that can take advantage of the Trick Room already. like the Nido, Abomasnow, Marrow, any of those options really. And then if you're going the Trick Room mode, I'd feel like you'd rather go NDD Aromatisse instead of, you can go Liepard or Perkusurk or Aromatisse, but I feel like if you're going a Fake Out Mound plus Trick Room, I feel like you'd be more incentivized to go a slower mon than Liepard, like Berserker plus Aromatisse.
Yeah.
I understand you can do, Liepard and Aromatisse, and then once Trick Room's up, you can go Fake Tears and then attack with Aromatisse. But I think that the Liepard with Prankster might get in the way a little. The Psychic Terry might get in the way a little bit of Liepard. So I think there is like a little bit of anti-synergy there. But, I don't think it's a problem at all. And despite that fact, they can maybe still find maybe another mode that doesn't even have Tailwind or Trick Room, and maybe you just control the game with Liepard.
Well, Nathan, I totally forgot. I totally forgot to mention the Snow Warning and Slush Rush combo with Arc Division Abomasnow.
Oh, yeah.
So this team has a really cool combination of terrain and weather, which I don't know if there are any other teams in this division in Kanto that can boast that. I haven't thought about it up until now, because you usually see just one, because it's really hard to secure yourself a really good weather mon and then a really good terrain mon. So that's another mode in itself that you could just could slap down
mode.
A TR mode, and then you could bring out Arctivish late game and be like, yeah, Slush Rush, baby, let's go.
Yeah, you could do that, or you could run it just Water Absorber Ice Body and use that in Trick Room.
Yeah,
either way, you have the option.
It's crazy.
So
it's a good team.
I think it's a good team. Yeah, cool. Well, the next team we have here is my team, so I'll let you talk about it.
Sure. I'll try my best. Obviously, you're very knowledgeable about your own team, but I'll do my best here. Okay, so I don't want to pat myself on the back, but you know what? When it came to helping the Twin League Tyrannitars pick a tier 5, Barbacle was this boy's idea right here. Okay, so I want to take credit for that. Everything else, though, I think is really going to be extremely oppressive. And putting bias aside for this coach, just looking at this mod, or really the mods, the team of mods, Rillaboom top tier. We all know it. But in both divisions, it was chosen the first 3 picks. It's crazy. And so Rillaboom with Grassy Glide, in Grassy Surge with Grassy Terrain just helps the whole team as a whole. You're getting health back constantly as long as the Pokemon are touching the ground. Now, we've got a really solid Fire, Water, Grass core here starting out from 3 extremely powerful Pokemon. You've got Rillaboom, Volcarona, and Azumarill, all different typings as well. Those dual typings help out big time with the Volcarona, and with the Azumarill, you always want a good Fairy type. On top of that, we're going to have a really, really solid Tailwind setter with Corviknight. Mirror Armor is a fantastic ability, so while there aren't too many times in this type of play where you're dropping stats against teams with double Intimidate like mine, or if you're trying to fake tears or even charm, that does not work for Mirror Armor. So that's a really, really big deal for Corviknight to just throw those stat debuffs back at their opponent, and to also just get up a Tailwind and take a hit. Toxtricity was a recent pickup. What did you have there before, Cortex?
I believe I had. No, that's a good question, Ryan.
Because this is your week 2 trade, right?
Yeah. This was the trade that I made most recently.
Okay. Because I think you traded Toxtricity and Noivern, right?
Well, I actually haven't made the Noivern trade yet. This is actually, I sent you a picture of actually my plan going into next week.
Okay.
But yeah, well, I think so. I actually have Machamp right now over Noivern, and I think that makes my team significantly weaker. So I would rank it, and talk about it based on that.
On the Machamp. Well.
Yeah, on the Machamp. You can talk about, the things that Noivern might bring, but that's still hypothetical.
For sure.
So
okay, sweet. Well, Toxtricity is a really great mon that has a differing type than the previous 4 mons before it, and it just has the stab that we're looking for when it comes to looking for coverage for some of these Pokemon here on the field. Next up,
Shedinja. It was Shedinja.
Oh yeah, it was Shed before. Your original draft was Shed and Machamp over Toxtricity and Noivern. Obviously, these are 2 major upgrades, and they're, I think, power ranking wise, definitely a big deal. And I think that's what puts you in the second tier here. Because I look at this team, And even down to your tier 4 and 5 picks, you've got solid options with every single Pokemon, truly maximizing all 11 Pokemon in your draft. You know, on my team, I've got a Solrock and a Lunatone. Like, yeah, each of those are going to have moments here or there where they can do good, but a Tough Claws Barnacle is going to come out swinging. An Avalugg with either Sturdy or Ice Body, even Own Tempo, right, is going to be able to take a hit as long as it's not super effective and stay on the field. Trevenant, you're getting up a wonderful Trick Room. Gardevoir, getting up a wonderful Trick Room. You've got two really solid ways to set that up. You've got one of the best fake out users in the draft to be able to set up Trick Room. And then you have Redirection on Volcarona as well. You have so many different possible combinations for leads that teams week after week after week are going to have to try to find a way to get around it. Because, I mean, Fire, Water, Grass is super strong. They cover each other really great. And so if you start Volcarona and Azumarill, or even Volcarona Rillaboom, there's so many different options. You can fake out, you can redirect, you can belly drum. Huge power in Azumarill makes it so that Azumarill is really overpowered, or you can trick your opponent into thinking that you're huge power and go Sap Sipper because you bring Rhydon with Lightning Rod to cover your lightning weakness, and then you give yourself Sap Sipper to cover any type of grass weakness, even though, you know, you already have the best grass type. So there's so much going on for this team, so many different modes when it comes to redirection, fake out, tailwind, trick room, and then choice items in general. You can give anything here a choice item, and it's pretty much gonna love it too. So I'm particularly scared of Gardevoir, not with choice item per se, but just in general having that stab fairy or even stab psychic typing when it comes to attacking against opponents. Trace is a fantastic ability as well, because you can plop yourself down on the field against someone who has, an opposing Pokemon with maybe with Intimidate, right? And then you intimidate them right back, and it's like, well, crap. Gardevoir just took Intimidate. Or if my opponent has Lightning Rod or something like that, you just never know when copying an opponent's ability is going to come in handy. And then after all of this, Noivern, I believe, also gets Tailwind as well. So once that trade does go through, you're going to have yourself two really capable Tailwind users. Noivern obviously being a little bit faster than that Corviknight, but the Dragon typing is really great. You finish out the Fantasy Core, Fire, Water, Grass Core. It's awesome. The team has so much going for it. It's really, I think you've put yourself in a great spot in order to take on any team this season. It really just comes down to execution and whether or not someone gets lucky based off of RNG, whether a move misses or who knows. So great work with the team. I believe I got everything though. I'll let you say if you missed anything else.
Oh yeah, thanks for that overview, Ryan. Yeah, I guess I'll just point out a couple last synergies. I have 4 Pokemon that can set up: Volcarona, Quiver Dance, Belly Drum with Azu, Swords Dance with Rillaboom, and then Shell Smash with Barbercall. Can set it up with either Fake Out Rillaboom or Redirection. For example, if I lead Rillaboom Volcarona, I can go Rage Powder Swords Dance or Fake Out Quiver Dance, depending. And then with Toxtricity, I'm excited. I just picked it up this week since I'm planning to eventually have 2 Telepathy Mons that I can use Discharge and Boom Burst next to. So excited for that. Mm-hmm. But yeah. Want to move on to our top team for this draft?
Absolutely. I mean, there's only one left after going through the previous 11, but that's going to be the Corpus Christi Kinglers. Cortex, take it away. All
right, man. I really like this team so much. It's got so many great Mon that cover each other very well. Already from the very beginning, seeing Garchomp, Rotom, and Scizor, yeah, that's already looking very strong. You gotta love the Disc Quake combo there with Garchomp and Rotom. Rotom Heat covering Garchomp's ice weakness, and Garchomp, covering Rotom's rock weakness. So I think that's already a very synergistic duo that you got going on there right now. I think Rotom Heat also gets some great defensive options. You can Light Screen, you can Will-O-Wisp, and then right after that you got Scizor. So we got the makings of a great fantasy core here. You got 2 Mons that can set up, which I always like in draft. Having Mons that can set up and sweep and are bulky enough to do so is always a plus. And then Gourgeist, that's a great Trick Room setter. It's a grass type. I believe in Gourgeist. it's their one ghost type, so that's cool. It can't be faked out. It gets Frisk is a nice ability to be able to see what your items are, which is pretty huge in draft. And then, I'm just going to skip ahead here to the Primarina, which I really like that they picked up, because the Primarina does a couple of things. For one, so they already picked up Garchomp and Scizor, which are two amazing physical attackers. And then they already picked up Rotom Heat, which is a great special attacker. And then they rounded it out even further with in my opinion, probably the perfect pickup to complete that trio. Primarina. You got the water type to round out the fire, water, grass, and the fairy type to round out the steel fairy dragon in the same mon. And it's a special attacker. It can boost itself with throat spray too. And then what we'll see is that, they have a way to set up Trick Room or Tailwind. Their Tailwind option is, a little bit less consistent in Unpheasant, but I don't think that's a big deal given the other mons that they have on their team. So Primarina can function in either Tailwind or Trick Room, as I believe the rest of these mons can too. Scizor could be great in Trick Room. Rotom Heat could be great in Trick Room. Garchomp, I think it's going to be good regardless, just because of its base stat total and its typing, depending on, what it's facing on the battlefield. I think Espeon's a nice, great special attack option that also gets some great supportive options and is really fast too, so it helps to round out that portion of their team. If I have any criticism for their team at all, it's just maybe like the Licky Tongue. I don't see that doing too much. I don't see really a week where I would bring, the Licky Tongue over, Throw or Lurantis or another physical attacker. But I still have to give them credit because it does get the Cloud9 ability, which we saw how many weather teams we just went through, right? So I think that even just having Cloud9 and Eviolite, maybe that's enough to bring Licky Tongue in a matchup, and maybe that can be the turning point for them that week. So, even then, I think they really, had a plan and were thinking this through when they drafted, when they made all their drafts. Torracat, it is sharing the fire type with Rotom Heat, but I can definitely see where they were going with it, with Fake Out and some more, supportive options like Parting Shot. Maybe you bring that a week over Rotom Heat, or maybe even bring both, depending on the matchup. Throw, it's a good fighting type. Inner Focus can't be intimidated. Lurantis, can boost itself up with Superpower and Leaf Storm. So, I'm a big fan of Lurantis for that slot. I think that this is just a very well-rounded team, very bulky team. And, I think that the core members being Garchomp, Rotom, Scizor, Primarina, I think those are going to really, I think you could probably bring those four every single week, and just by playing well, have a great shot at just beating your opponent from there, just making smart switches and, firing off powerful attacks or boosting when you can. Rotom gets Nasty Plot as well. And I think this team's got great synergy overall. And whoever drafted this did a good job.
Well said, my guy. Well, that is the Kanto division. It's going to be a spicy time. Moving on to the Johto division. Oh, boy. This was a fun one. Cortex and I were both in the same division in Kanto, so it was really fun to go over, kind of hop over the wall here and be like, okay, let's check this out. So starting in at number 12, I think I could start with this one.
Go for it.
So we looked at this team and we said, okay, you've got Whimsicott Dracovish, you've got Whimsicott Rotom Heat, Raichu Alola, that's really cool. But then it kind of starts to break down itself to a point where you've got some type combinations when it comes to having Rotom Heat and Raichu Alola. Surge Surfer's cool, but you don't have electric terrain to help out this Alola and Raichu be even better. Drifblim doesn't have a terrain to help it pop on birding, and that's huge for getting Drifblim in a really, really good spot. And so we just don't see that being amazing for this team when it comes to using Drifblim as a usable Tailwind user. Having Vaporeon and Flareon on the same team, as for coverage, I mean, Flareon's got a really nice attack stat. Vaporeon obviously is water absorb, so that's nice. But it's just like, you've already got a fire type with Rotom Heat too. So we see Raichu Alola and we see Flareon, we're like, and Raboot, right? And then we see Rotom Heat, we're like, Rotom Heat can do everything those 3 Pokemon want to do, right? And so that's like a really big deal when it comes to considering, okay, can this team have like a lot of variety? And so the answer we kind of came to is no. There's just a lot of overlapping Mons. They've got one of the best Tailwind users in the game, and then, Drifblim like can use it as well, but doesn't have an easy way to access a Burden. And then your only mode of Trick Room is either going to be Mr. Rhyme or Whimsicott. Once again, these 2 Pokemon are not like what I would consider top tier Trick Room users. So it's going to be really tough for you to be able to get that off. And then when it comes time to use Trick Room, you don't really have a lot to use in Trick Room itself that kind of like come off as an immediate threat. And so we found that this team, power ranking wise, was going to be sitting at number 12 because we just couldn't see too many good combinations of cores to be able to take on every team week after week and guarantee a W. And then
yeah, well said, right?
Yeah,
oh,
thank you.
Go ahead.
And please fill in the cracks here, because I'm sure I left out some stuff.
No, I think you actually said everything. I was just gonna make a connection to one of the teams in the previous league, Kanto. I think that this team kind of reminds me a lot of Rebellion, whereas Rebellion had Whimsicott as their Tailwind setter, but they didn't have too many things that can really, dish out immediate damage with those 3 turns of Tailwind. I think they had they had Inteleon, which was solid, and then Dragon and Arcanine are probably their best bets. So this team, I think, is in a similar boat, but I think it's actually a little worse because you have Whimsicott and then you have Dracovish, which is amazing, right? That's an awesome combination.
Huge picks.
But yeah, huge picks. But then I'm looking, for what to fill out the rest of that with, and Rotom Heat is solid. But after that, I don't know that there's much that can really do either huge single target damage or huge spread damage.
Yeah.
With that are not the same type coverages as Rotom Heat and Dracovish, right? Because Vaporeon is the same as Dracovish, and then Raichu and Flareon are going to have the same stab as Rotom Heat, and so I think this team just lacks a little bit of variety with that. And then like you mentioned, the Tricker mode, I think it could be, it might be a little harder to set up since they don't have Fake Out or Redirection for that. They just have they can actually use Mr. Mime, funnily enough, as a Fake Out Mon, and then use Whimsicott to set Trick Room. That's probably the most consistent thing that I can think of.
Does Raichu Alola get Fake Out?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Raichu Alola. But then if you're bringing Raichu Alola, it's obviously a really fast Mon to be using in Trick Room, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, thank you for reminding me of that, Ryan.
Yep, absolutely.
And yeah, I think that about covers this team.
Sweet.
That being said, definitely excited to see, how it does in practice and if they make any transactions.
I agree with you. You got 3 transactions during the season, so you never know what may come up. So we'll have to see what the Flint Flareons are able to do in Johto. Luckily, we're not in this division, so it doesn't affect us too much, but we'll see. Moving on to the Miami Minchinos. This is all you, Cortex.
Yeah, sure. I think this one actually might be a little bit of a hot take here, because if I remember correctly, in some other power rankings, I think people had this team a lot higher. So, let me talk about, our reasoning here.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you got Grimmsnarl and Ninetales Alola, and I'm not sure how I feel too much about Grimmsnarl being the tier 1 pick here, or Ninetales being the tier 2. Since I think there is some overlap in what they do or in what they'd like to do for this team. I think for this team specifically, they're going to want to try to set up Aurora Veil or screens with Grimmsnarl. Crobat is a solid pick, right? Tailwind, we've already gone over how good Crobat can be in doing what it wants to do. Now, one thing, so talking about this team at large, it doesn't have too many methods of speed control outside of Tailwind. You have maybe Thunder Wave or Scary Face from Grimmsnarl. No Trick Room on this team, so going to be relying more on the Espeon. Oh, I think Espeon does get Trick Room, although it is very fast, right?
Yeah, it's not.
But it is a lot frailer, right?
It's not your preferred.
No Slowbro,
no
Slowbro or Uniclus. But thank you for catching that, Ryan. I think that this team really relies a lot on its Metagross slot for damage. you know, it's the biggest physical attacker on this team, and I'm looking at other physical damage. You have Cincino, which I believe is around base 95 attack. You know, Grimmsnarl can maybe do some damage if you make it more physically oriented. You know, you have the Zuelis with Hustle, but, you know, that's a little bit unreliable in my opinion. Swampert doesn't have the highest attack stat. You know, Walrein, you know, I think so as well. And on the special side, you have Espeon, you know, as the biggest means of special damage there. I think it has 130 special attack, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And then, you know, Ninetales is kind of falling behind. I think its special attack stat is around 81, 85, something like that.
81, yeah.
Yeah, so, and then not a whole lot does special damage besides that, right? You have, you know, maybe Walrein and Swampert can... Swampert is more of kind of a pivot, I think, in my opinion, with Flip Turn or Yawn, Scald, Earth Power, things like that. So I think while they do have some good options for Tailwind and supporting the game and increasing the longevity of their team, you know, they also don't have a fire type. So I can see steel types in particularly being harder for this team to handle, with their main ways of handling steel types being in Swampert, which, you know, isn't the most offensive mon. The Ivysaur, I don't know, will be doing a whole lot for them. You know, maybe give it an Eviolite, maybe you can, you know, Sleep Powder and stall out for a turns. The Stunfist Galar, I believe is still in ground type, right, Ryan? I think it's not displaying there correctly.
It wasn't displaying correctly for some reason, but yeah, it's there.
Okay,
I just
so
noticed
maybe
that.
that's yeah, another way to deal with steel types there. But I think that, you know, while this team does have some options, I think it's a little bit too reliant on its. I'm not sure that there's enough offense on this team to support like the screens and the Tailwind modes that it has at its disposal. So I think if you can get past the Metagross on the physical side, or if you can get past the Espeon on the special side, I think people will have an easier time against this team.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think this team was probably the biggest discrepancy when we were both ranking it, because I was kind of on the bandwagon when it came to having this team in a higher spot, but as we talked about it more and we kind of took a look at what was actually going on, you know, I hate to say it, but complete reliance on a Metagross with screens is only one game mode, right? I mean, look at the teams in Kanto that have so many different options in the top 5.
Yeah, different game modes, right?
Yeah, it's just there's so many different things to do, and with this team, yes, you're gonna put a Pale, you're gonna set up Aurora Veil, you've got screens for Metagross, but folks, Brick Break exists and people use it a lot. Psychic Fangs exists and people will use it if they know that that is your game plan. Crobat is going to get you a Tailwind, and that's awesome. But Tailwind is only going to take you so far when somebody else then uses Tailwind. And then what? You made a really good note, Cortex, of mentioning the lack of fire types. And I see quite a few steel weaknesses on the team. So it's definitely not going to be easy for them. I'm interested to see if they're able to make any trade of any kind for a fire type. But as we know, fire types in a draft league like this with no legendaries, they're hard and
a little bit harder to come by.
Yeah. So they're hard to pick up, and to get a good one that can actually do some damage too, instead of being in T4 or Tier 5, it's good luck. So Miami Minchinos, we put you at number 11. We hope to maybe see you do well though, because like, yes, you have that one mode, but it could do really well week after week if people aren't prepared. So we'll see.
Moving on, we got the Coffee Smokers coming in.
Smokers coming in at
Smoking
number 10.
at 10. Ryan, you want to take this?
Gosh, yeah, I'm happy to. So we had a lot of high hopes for this type of team, because you see the Volcarona, you see the Sableye, you see the Corviknight, you're like, wow, those are 3 really offensive Pokemon. And then as you kind of keep going along, you're looking into a Nidoking, a Stonejourner with Power Spot, and then Executor Lola, right? And then we start to question a huge Tier 1 pick here with the Barraskewda. This is probably the number one thing that put this team in the spot that it's in. Because you draft a Volcarona, you draft yourself a Sableye, you draft yourself a Corviknight, and even the Nidoking, right? You draft yourself these mons and then say to yourself, wow, I really need to give myself a Pokemon that ignores redirection. But I'm not going to give myself access to rain. I'm not going to give myself access to something that's truly going to help Barraskewda be better, because it is a glass cannon. Barraskewda cannot take a hit. We don't have Dynamax to allow it to have more HP, which is why it was really good in Dynamax, because it had, you know, water, dark type coverage, even rock coverage if I remember correctly too. But without that, you know, it's kind of like, what am I doing? Like, is Propeller Tail really worth it as another tier 1 pick? And so after looking at this team and the synergies, you know, something that we've commented on before, you know, you've got the Grookey in the T5 spot. Grassy Surge is cool. Are they ever going to bring Grookey? Probably not. Probably not. And because of that, we're like, okay, so your next best grass type is going to be Executor Lola, which in the right spot can do really well. And with Volcarona with redirection, that's really cool too. You've also got Struggle Bug to lower the special attack of opposing fairy types if they're coming at you trying to spam Dazzling Gleam or even a Moon Blast. So you do have the capability to put yourself in a pretty good spot, including Corviknight and Nidoking to neutralize fairies. But fairy types are not the only issue, right? There are other teams with really solid Firewater Grass cores and Fantasy cores that are going to take advantage of a team like this because you don't really have a solid Fake Out user. Is a Prankster Sableye really what you want to be using here? You know, is Quash really going to be that good at the start of the game compared to just faking something out, setting up your Volcarona with a Quiver Dance, and then being like, okay, I guess now I'll Quash? Well, I could also set up a Tailwind instead with Corviknight and start out speeding my opponents instead of trying to delay their move, because their move still happens because you're not actually doing any damage to them. Now, I don't want to make this seem like I'm shitting on Sableye, because Sableye in a really good spot, even on a team like this, can do really well. Because you're forcing your opponent to move last in the order, and that's a really big deal. But it's not like you're flinching your opponent, making them not move at all. So I just don't see Sableye as the strongest member of this team when it comes to, you know, wanting to get out really big damage with Nidoking, because that's what Nidoking does. Sheer Force Nidoking, all it wants to do is do big damage and be fast and just go. And I think Stonejourner and Nidoking together is really cool because you can use that Power Spot ability with Sheer Force to keep powering up that Nidoking. Yeah, there's just a lot here. The Palisand, as well as your like token ground type on the team, having that ghost typing is not helpful, because if people take advantage of that, they hit it with a Shadow Ball or a physical ghost type move like Shadow Claw. Palisand doesn't like that. It's not fun. Overall, Grassy Sir, I don't think it's I'm not giving this team like, oh, it has a terrain. I don't think Grookey really counts as like, oh yeah, this team has like solid terrain. You've got a Grookey with Grassy Surge. If you bring it for, I mean, for some reason, like, it's only really helping the Stonejourner if you want to stop Earthquake, right? So overall, the synergy of this team doesn't really do it for me. I've said a lot on this. Cortex, please fill in the gaps when it comes to the team synergies, because I guess we just really didn't see a lot of that.
Yeah, sure. I'm actually okay with some of the, some of the picks. Like, I think the Palisand is perfectly fine. It's the only ghost type, and you have a normal type already. And so, you do already have the ground type in Nidoking, so there is that. But it's good for the Trick Room mode. The Barraskewda, I would love for the Barraskewda to be a Gyarados, because I actually think Gyarados is still on the board for this division, and I also think Primarina is still on the board for this division as well.
Yeah.
And I think either of those mons would be phenomenally much better than Barraskewda. Just, I think we'll be able to have more longevity, we'll be able to have more of an impact, we'll have more flexibility. Primarina, you can run in Tailwind or Trick Room for this team, and you can also, get a little mini setup with Throat Spray and Hyper Voice, good spread damage too, along with the Heat Wave from Volcarona. And then Gyarados, good for Intimidate, which this team doesn't have, and can offer some another mon to set up, right, with Dragon Dance alongside Sableye's Fake Out next with when you already have Quiver Dance on Volcarona. I think the Sableye is an okay pick here. I think its main purposes or roles would probably be to help fit Volcarona setup, or to help the Trick Room setup alongside Alolan Executor. So, it does have the Tailwind mode and the Trick Room mode, and, Nidoking and some of these other mods definitely appreciate that. So Steam definitely has some things going for it. It's got some nice coverage options, fire, ground, fighting, ghost, all of these are really good offensive types. So while this team does have, some good things going for it, I do think that, for example, the Barraskewda, if that was a little bit different, or, maybe if you kept the Barraskewda, maybe you want something more out of the Sableye slot. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say for this one.
Number 9, the Carolina Berserkers. All you, Cortex.
Carolina Berserkers. Nice. So this team actually made a recent transaction for, I believe they had Mamoswine in the Como-O slot, and they recently swapped it out for Como-O, which I kind of like and don't like. I think I like it more overall. They are going to miss out on the ground and the ice coverage, which is pretty nice for them, since they don't have ground or ice stab elsewhere on the team, and they already have 2 fighting types in Riolu and Combusken. Maybe they have plans to, trade one of those out now that they have Como-O. I can see Combusken going out. I can also see Riolu going out too, since, it's triple fighting now. I don't see them bringing all of them, in the same week. So right off the bat, some nice synergies that I can think of for this team are, they have a couple great fake out mons, to assist with their strategy and setup. You actually do have Trick Room on this team, funnily enough, with Galarian Rapidash, even though it's kind of faster. That is an option. And then they do have Tailwind with Mantine. So their speed control options are limited to their lower tier mons, which are not the most consistent for sure, but they have them. And you also have Raichu, which, it gets Nuzzle and Electro Web, so that can work as well. And I like Como-O instead of Mamo now, because Como-O can set up really nicely, and Raichu and Berserker help to enable that. They have double Intimidate on the team, which I think is pretty cool. We went over double Intimidate before. They got a Fire, Water, Grass core, seems pretty cool. Blastoise is a good pivot mod. I think the main thing that this team lacks was just offensive firepower.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really see, mods on this team with a really high attack or special attack stat. Nothing I think can really hit that hard right off the bat. Unlike even some of the lower teams, like the previous team had Volcarona, right? That's already got base 135 special attack, can fire off a powerful Heat Wave or Overheat, right? And then Sheer Force Nidoking Life Orb is going to be hitting super hard. So I don't think that this team really has any super hard hitters like that off the bat. I think this is more, they kind of try to stall out the game. It's going to be a little bit grindier. Maybe you get a Will-O-Wisp off with Arcanine or a Snarl off. Maybe you get an Eerie Impulse or Charm off with Raichu. Maybe you do some pivoting around with a Fake Out and the flip turn. I know Blastoise does get Shell Smash, and Como-O gets, its signature setup move. And so I think that paired along with kind of this bulkier play with the double Fake Out with Berserker and Raichu, there might be some great opportunities for setup there. So I think that that's probably the strongest thing that this team has going for it. Some of these other picks I think are a little bit questionable, like Combusken has a little bit of overlap now with Arcanine and Como-O. And then Riolu I think is not as good in no max. I think it still has its niche, but I think with coaching, I think it's definitely stronger with the Dynamax Mong that has more longevity. That being said, I think it can still work, so I'm excited to see how this team's going to do. I think as we're getting near towards these middle ranking teams, we definitely had a tough time. There were some discrepancies in Ryan and I's rankings, and even just ranking them myself, I was having a hard time. So, I think that there is room for variance in these next few teams. Ryan, do you have anything more you'd like to add for this one?
The double Intimidate is nice to see on this team as well, between Arcanine and Stoutland. They do have a Firewater Grass core with Decidueye kind of rounding out the Arcanine Blastoise, and Decidueye itself as like a solid Firewater Grass. That being said, Decidueye doesn't really like to take a hit too often, and that ghost typing does not help when it comes to having more weaknesses as a grass type. So overall, I think the team's got some potential. It's got a few things, mainly, as you mentioned, when it comes to speed control from those lower tier mons. It's not consistent, but it's still there, and it's still possible. They've got double fake out, so we'll see. I think the Berserkers definitely have a chance to do very well in this season, but they did not place higher because of the things that were mentioned before. So that's all I got for the Carolina Berserkers.
Awesome. Moving on to number 8, the Great Lake Grimmsnarls.
Ooh.
Brian, you want to walk us through?
Absolutely. So there's been a lot of talk in a lot of videos about the use of Cinderace, and how good is it still? A lot of folks, most say, oh, it's like not as good without Max. Some folks, obviously the ones who drafted it, are like, yo, give me some respect for Cinderace because it's doing itself a favor. Well, in this division, the Cinderace is not on a team around rain, right? Because if I remember correctly, in Kanto, the Cinderace is on a rain team.
Yeah, it was on a team with Pelipper, Armaldo, and Poliwrath, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and so that does not mesh well with Cinderace trying to just spam Pyro Ball, which does not have 100% accuracy, which is why we were like, ooh, Cinderace as a tier 1 pick, that's a little risky. But you know what? Let's take a second look at this team and maybe give it another chance. And so that's what we did.
I like Cinderace more on this team, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Cinderace on this team, it's better. And here's why. You've got Noivern, you've got Butterfree. 2 solid Tailwind users. They're both pretty fast. Redirection on Butterfree as well with Rage Powder. That's great for Azumarill and Cinderace. You've got a really solid Trick Room Center with Reuniclus. Magic Guard is fantastic. Overcoat's great too. And hey, maybe you want to use it as a special attacker. So Regenerator is obviously going to be a great way to take a hit, swap it out again, send it in, and then fire off a powerful Psychic type move. That's really cool. You've got Thwackey on this team because Rillaboom has been taken. So it's better than Grookey. And I'm going to give you credit. The Grassy Surge is definitely helpful for the team to be able to get a little bit of health back. You've got Dubwool, which, you know what? I'll give it credit. Like, Dubwool can definitely put off some powerful attacks. It's a lower tier mon, and you know what? It's one of the better ones. Bisharp is fantastic with Defiant, but not as many people have Intimidate as an ability. So, how good is that going to be? Well, Belly Drum negates all Intimidates on Azumarill anyways until it starts getting intimidated again, so it doesn't really care about it. But you know what? Cinderace doesn't want to be intimidated, and Avalugg, Hitmonchan, you get the point. Like, there are physical members of this team that will benefit from a Defiant user being there, but I think most of all, having this Steel type here is really good for finishing out the Fantasy Core. And then overall, the team does a good job of trying to finish out the Firewater Grass Core as well. Haunter's really cool because I believe that can set up Trick Room as well, if I remember correctly.
It can set up. It's a Ghost Trick Room setter, which can't be faked out. So a pretty okay pickup there.
Absolutely. And then Hitmonchan, arguably a better low tier fake out user as well. So. I think every slot here has been filled appropriately. I mean, the double is a double, right? So other than that, I think that the team has a lot of solid coverage and good defensive pivots if they need to. There are offensive pressures right off of the bat from a few of these Pokemon as well. And there's just really great usage of speed control on the team overall.
Yeah.
Cortex. Yeah. What have I missed?
I loved everything that you said. Loved it. You mentioned double Tailwind, double Trick Room setters. You got either Rage Powder or Fake Out to help you set up either one. Avalugg with Wide Guard. I think you pretty much hit everything. I think this team's got some great options. I like their draft. I think it's very coherent. It's got great synergy all around. I'm excited to see how this team does. I think that they were really intentional about every pick and how it fit into their overall team.
The struggle for us, as you said, has to be these mid-tier picks because placing them one above each other, it's a struggle. It is really a struggle. Up next, we got the Pittsburgh Steel types. Cortex, take it away, my dude.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. So this team, I think they recently made a transaction for Sceptile. I don't remember what it used to be before, but with Sceptile now, I think I like the pick because it gives them another special attacking option alongside the previous Jellicent and Galvantula, and Weezing as well. And it also completes their Fire, Water, Grass scoring. It's a little faster, so I think it fleshes out that mode of the team a bit better. And so, yeah, I do like the Sceptile pickup there. They have Tailwind with Unpheasant. Not the most reliable, but, it's there. You like to see it in a Tier 5 pickup. I believe Unpheasant's Tier 5. Incineroar is a great solid. I think Incineroar does a huge amount for this team in enabling a lot of what it's got going on. Whether that be Trick Room, or whether that be, setting up for Tailwind or setting up the Hexorus with Dragon Dance. I think it's got a pretty good Trick Room mode. I think the Trick Room mode is built out enough. It doesn't have too much, but I think what it has, it can definitely do a lot with. That being Incineroar, Jellicent, Copperajah as a big Life Orb Sheer Force sweeper. I think you can run Behem as well on that Trick Room mode, or you can run Jellicent alongside a Follow Me Togepi to set up Trick Room that way, and then run an offensive Incineroar in the back. That's something that you can also do. So. And then the Weezing Galar, I was talking about this with Ryan, and I think the Weezing Galar actually, now these are power rankings, right? So these are not just looking at the team and seeing like, how strong does this team look as a standalone team? Well, power rankings are, how strong do these teams stack up against each other within their division? And so I think that the Weezing Galar actually does pretty well against a lot of what the other teams have going on. For example, the number 6 team, just to give you a sneak preview, has both weather and terrain, and a lot of terrain related strategies, and some other abilities, and then later on we have several teams that rely on mons with their abilities to be able to get up their main strategies. So I think that the combination of Galarian, Weezing, and Incineroar can really slow the game down in that way, and you can kind of whittle the team down, get some damage mitigation off, and then bring out your main sweepers later in the back, either Haxorus or Copperajah. And you can even use Galvantula, for some additional speed control if you need. There are some weaker points on the team, like the Munchlax. I'm not sure how good that's going to be. In theory, I'm not too big of a fan of Munchlax. Aside from that, I think it's got good type coverage all around. It's got some great defensive switching. Anything I missed, Ryan, that you'd like to add on?
No, I think you got it all. I think it was well said that the teams before this, I think, struggle with Weezing Galar coming on in with neutralizing gas, and then slowing things down, doing that chip damage, and then sending in some of these sweepers to just close out the game. And I think that's definitely what puts it here in the middle. Obviously, like we said, I'll say it again. Starting from 8 and going to like 4 or 5, these are really, really hard to. We have to place them somewhere, right?
Yeah,
so
we got to place them somewhere.
We place this team at number 7. Definitely not an easy choice, but worthy of its spot nonetheless. And so we're excited to see what it does, what they can do, and I'm happy to see where it's at. So, yeah, that's number 7.
Up next, we got the Sussex Sableyes at number 6.
I am very excited about this team. But you're right. Very, very dependent upon a couple things here. So, we've obviously got a Sun mode. We've got the Ninetales with the Lilligant. That's very oppressive, very fast.
Yeah, that's strong. Sleep powder is a huge thing, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, putting them on to sleep and then throwing out a nasty heat wave from Ninetales.
Yeah, even after you, right?
After you too. These are just things you don't want to see that, right? It's scary. Mm-hmm. It's scary. So you've got a fast mode there. You've got Tailwind with Mandibuzz. You've got a super awesome Slow King on the field from the Sussex Sableyes. So you're going to have a really solid Trick Room user. But then remember, Indeedee Female is on this team. Psychic Terrain takes out the fear of Fake Out. And then you've also got Redirection from Follow Me with Indeedee. So you have one of the best redirectors in the draft on this team. So a lot of these Pokemon, like Slurpuff as well, they're feeling good about the fact that, hey, single attacks are not going to be hitting me right away because indeed he can redirect them for me. So I can get up a belly drum, pop on burden, and all of a sudden now I'm popping off. That's crazy. That's super, super fun to see. You've also got Flygon as the dragon type on the team and the ground type. Super cool. Definitely a little bit weaker with his being 4 times weak to ice, but you know what? You can get around it because you've got Ninetales, you've got Salazzle, you've even got a Mawile that you can have in Trick Room with Slowking as well. Armaldo's really cool to see here. I know it doesn't mesh too well with the fact that you're using Sun, but you know what? A rock bug type can do some stuff. Quagsire is cool to see too. Water Absorb is always helpful. Unaware is really great for ignoring stats too, so just some consistent damage, and another ground type. Overall, I like this team a lot. I think we put it in the middle because we're like, this team has a lot of solid modes. It's got great redirection. It can be really fast. It could also be pretty slow. Its slower mode isn't the strongest. I think that's what we agreed upon. And so that's why it's not placed higher. Well, or at least one of the reasons, because you don't really have too many attackers here that abuse a slower mode. But you know what? Its faster mode is consistent enough, and the ability to redirect is so big that you are definitely able to get that edge on your opponent and take some dubs. Cortex, what did I miss?
I think you hit everything. Yeah, and one quick thing I'd like to point out too is that they do have Size Spam, the slower version of it.
Yes.
You know, they can go follow me and then expanding force Slowking. That should be pretty strong in Trick Room too. But yeah, you got everything else. I like that. You know, like you mentioned, I think this team has some great modes going for it. You know, Tailwind or Trick Room, and yeah, I think even the Sun mode too. So I think it's got some good synergies. I'm excited to see how it goes.
Number 5, the Detroit Delmise, getting into the top 5 here. Cortex, take it away.
For sure. All right. Well, like the previous team, I think this team also has some great methods for controlling the game here. You know, they have Talonflame, which can dish out a whole lot of damage immediately, or it can go for Tailwind. It also gets some interesting tools like Will-O-Wisp, Taunt, and Quick Guard. So that could be interesting to see. For the Trick Room and the slower method, the slower mons on this team, because they definitely have some slower mons here with the Pincurchin and the Marowak. You have the Aromatisse, and they're able to either go Tangela Aromatisse or Delibird Fake Out or Hitmonlee Fake Out alongside the Aromatisse, and that could be pretty solid. I think that the Fairy Steel Dragon combination is pretty good here. Hydreigon, Aegislash, and Aromatisse balance each other out pretty nicely. Hydreigon covering Aegislash's additional ground weakness is pretty sweet. And then, also covering Aegislash's fire weakness, of course, and then Aegislash covering, the ice, the fairy, and the fighting weakness as well. It's not too often that you have, two mons covering each other so perfectly as Hydreigon and Aegislash, so I think that duo is especially powerful.
Yeah.
You got some cool synergies with the Unburden and the Electric Surge, Electric Seed Hitmonlee. That could be pretty cool. You have, I think Marowak is one of the best mons, if not, the top of the tier that it's in, if I remember correctly. And I think that this team has a lot of options for immediate damage output too, whether that be a huge Draco Meteor from Hydreigon, a powerful Flare Blitz or Brave Bird from Talonflame, a move from Aegislash. Marowak's very strong right from the gate. And they also have some methods to set up as well. They can go Tangela and Shell Smash with Caracosta, Tangela with Nasty Plot Hydreigon, and then set up Tailwind at a later point. So, those are the synergies that I can see. I'm sure Swoobat gets some interesting stuff too. Maybe there's some stuff that I'm not even thinking of that the coach for this team drafted with Simple and things like that with what Swoobat and some other stuff can do. So I'm definitely excited to see the matches for this team and how that plays out. Definitely want to see the pace for this team because I think that they have some cool options to go here. Ryan, want to add anything? And I miss anything you want to say?
This kind of rounds out the end of the mid tier, and I think it's in the end of the mid tier, right before like top 4. because we talked about Galewing's Talonflame being this really great Tailwind user for the team, and then saying to ourselves, okay, what can abuse that Tailwind really well? And then we kind of started to look at like who these big attackers were. And, you know, Aegislash can appreciate a Tailwind, but it really does appreciate Trick Room. Pincurchin really appreciates Trick Room, and so does Marowak as well. And so we started to ask ourselves, okay, how is the balance of this team when it comes to Tailwind and Trick Room? And as you'll see with these next few teams, and similarly to Kanto, you start to see a really great balance and multiple fleshed out modes. Whereas I think Detroit Delmise has 2 solid modes. They could be better. The Delibird pickup, I don't know too much about Delibird personally. It gets Hustle, that's cool. It's an ice flying type, so I'm sure it covers some things nicely for you. But other than that, you don't have a faster abuser other than Hydreigon, obviously. And, you know, Swoobat, I don't think is the slowest mon. I think it's like mid-tier when it comes to speed. Simple is definitely an interesting thing because I believe it gets skill swap. And so anytime you get a stat boost, right, it's going to like double the stat boost for you. So there could be some cool strats with that depending on what you do with it.
Swoobat, double shell smash in 1 turn, right?
Yeah, I mean, there you go. Like that would be crazy. If you were able to get Swoobat Caracasa on the field and then do that type of strategy, right? Like that'd be nutty. But other than that, you've got Tangela for redirection. Does Hitmonlee have Fake Out?
Yes,
okay.
It does.
So you've got like I think 2 subpar like support users that I think could be better, right? And so I think that's why we have them at 5. But you know what? At least they're there, and at least they can do that because it's better than not having them. So that's my take. Number 4.
yeah, 4 Trixie Tricos. This is all you, right?
I'll go for it. This is a team that has battled this week, so I saw that, and then we're doing power rankings, and I'm like, oh my god, I have to not be biased, and I've tried to do my best in doing so. Cortex not seeing that battle yet, that was helpful. But looking at this team, right off the bat, you're going to see a Garchomp. That is a beautiful Tier 1 Pokemon. And then you've got Toxicroak with Fake Out. You've got Trick Room with Carbink. And that's really cool. But then what also is really cool is Prankster Meowstick. Because Meowstick, in general, has a lot of different support capabilities. It's a really cool Pokemon. And so because of that, while this team does not appear to have Psychic Terrain, it is a move that Meowstick can use as a Prankster Pokemon to get it up right away to really make Expanding Force from itself and from Starmie really oppressive. So this Psychic Spam mode that is almost guaranteed, almost as long as Fake Out doesn't come out, is really great. You've got a super solid Trick Room mode with Carbink. You've also got it on Trevenant as well. I don't even know why I skipped over Trevenant in my mind. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy that I didn't mention it. 2 really solid like Pokemon that could take a hit. Carbink could definitely take a hit, obviously. And Trev can too. Harvest is a really great ability. Frisk, obviously, being wonderful in draft leagues, like you mentioned before, to check out what your opponents are using for items. You've got Psychic Spam. You've got Garchomp that can set itself up in like a faster mode. You've also got Absol with Super Luck. You can give it Scope Lens. If you're lucky, you can start getting off crits, and then that's really cool too. You've got Wigglytuff on the team as a lower tier pick with competitive, so if someone tries to intimidate spam you, this is really helpful because the Wigglytuff's like, yo bro, you can't do that to me, and then it's going to start hitting you back and it's going to hurt. The Charizard pick on this team is where we start to kind of question things, and it's why it's at number 4. Charizard, without the max, it's not really fantastic. When it had the ability to Mega Evolve, it was even better. But without that, it's like, okay, well, do you have Sun at least? And on this team at first glance, I'm not really seeing the ability for Sun to come out, meaning that Solar Power just isn't a thing, especially right away. Now, I don't know if Meowstick gets ability to Sunny Day.
It does get Sunny Day, but you know, that requires like a turn.
That is a
of
turn
Meowstic to set
for
up,
a
right?
Meowstic and a Charizard to set up, and none of those
You
Pokemon
gotta
like to
have
take
them
a
out
hit.
at the same time, yeah.
Yeah. And so all you need is a fake out and a rock slide, and your day starts to kind of get worse. So also, this team, I don't see it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't see a Tailwind option.
Yeah, no, this team doesn't have a Tailwind option. I
Okay.
think, just has Thunder Wave and Trick Shenanigans.
Yeah, and that, can work, but without a solid Tailwind, that can be difficult. But you know what? Because this team has such a solid Trick Room mode and some really great Pokemon out of that, we decided, okay, like it definitely deserves a really good spot. I didn't mention Aggron yet. It's definitely abusable under Trick Room. It also has quite a variety of moves, which is really funny. Steel Rock type, but you know what? It gets access to some really funny special moves as well. And so who knows what you want to do with this Pokemon, because it has so much going for it. Sturdy's really great. Rockhead obviously really helpful to negate any recoil. I'm just going on and on here. Really great Trick Room mode. Some solid mons outside of Trick Room. Toxicroak is helpful if you go up against a rain team, that sort of thing. Okay, what have I missed, Cortex?
I think you got everything. I was just gonna say, did you know that Aggron gets Hydro Pump and Whirlpool?
That's why I wanted to. That's what I was thinking. I knew it got access to some wacky special moves for quite a few different types. I think it also gets Blizzard, access to Thunder. I don't know if it gets Fire Blast or not. I feel like it might.
It does, yeah.
It does,
yeah. Not that you would ever use those with the base 60 special attack, but
yeah,
exactly.
The one thing about Aggron is that its stats are not amazing when it comes to defenses. Well, I think it has good defense.
Oh, defense! It's got defense.
Yeah, but
Special
it doesn't
defense
have
is okay.
special defense, and yeah. So, this team has a lot going for it. I think it's got like a lot of different combos. So I don't think you'll be looking at the same 4 to 5 Pokemon every week. I think that there's a lot that the Trixie Tricos can do to kind of be Trixie. You know what I mean?
I think that they can be really tricksy, especially without Meowstic. I think that there's so many different. I think that the Meowstic is going to be a huge enabler for them every week, because I think that with such a wide variety of move pool that Meowstic gets, I think it's going to be close to impossible to prep for, just because it can have so many different types of moves that it gets for controlling the match. You have moves like Trick and Thunder Wave and Taunt and Fake Tears and the list continues. Weather setting moves, terrain setting moves, screens.
For sure.
Yawn, right? Ally Switch, Charm, Helping Hand, Quick Guard, Safeguard, Skill Swap, right? The list goes on. So I think that, they have a lot of options, and it's going to be, I think that alone, is going to make them harder to prep for.
Moving on, after the Trixie Tricos, we got the Dutch Drapions. Cortex, all you.
Oh yeah. I told you I really like this team and how they structured their draft. I think they recently picked up Barbaracle too in that tier 5 slot, which I think is an amazing pickup for them. So one thing that I want to point out from the gate is they have so many possibilities for setup and making sure that setup happens. So the obvious one is Togekiss with Follow Me as a redirector, with Dragon Dance, Dragapult, Shell Smash, Barbaracle, Swords Dance, or Nasty Plot, Lucario. And I don't know if I'm missing any other setup ones, but those are the main ones. And you can also, run Justified Lucario with Beat Up Dragapult that can't be faked out, so that's pretty cool.
Yep.
You can also run Support Dragapult, right? And either set up Kiss with Nasty Plot, or you don't even need that. You could just go Crit Kiss. And then you also have Fake Out. You have 2 great Fake Out mons. Decently good Fake Out mons to help you get your setup correctly too, with some nice pivoting. You got some nice speed control options with 2 nice Trick Room users. You can use Fake Out or Togekiss to help you set them up if you need to, but Slowbro and Mr. Mime are already really bulky on their own, especially now that I believe Mr. Mime, can it bulk itself up with Eviolite now that evolves into Mr. Rhyme?
I don't know that for sure. If it evolves, I assume the answer is yes, but I
It
don't
might
know.
be. I'm not sure if Mr. Mime gets that capability or if it's just Mr. Mime Galarian. It might be just Mr. Mime Galarian,
Okay.
but I'm not sure. Anyway, regardless, Mr. Mime has good bulk, right? And there's a lot of great type synergy on this team, great type coverage and defensive coverage. They got a good physical to special split, right? With a lot of mons can be run either or, right? The main ones being Dragapult and Lucario, those can be run either physical or special depending on the week. And I think this team has a lot of options. They cover their offensive coverage really nicely. Yeah, I mean, just look at their types. You have so many different types here. You got Fire, Water, Grass. You got Fairy, Steel, Dragon represented. You got, Ghost, Psychic, Dark, Normal. Rock coverage is always nice to have. Maractus has Storm Drain to help protect. Not that they're too weak to water types already, but it's a nice ability to have nevertheless. I'm looking at Rotom here next. Electric coverage. You can go Discharge next to Nidoqueen, so that's a cool synergy there as well. Yeah, this team doesn't have Tailwind, but I don't think it really needs it just because it has so many options for slowing the game down with, I think you have double Parting Shot, right? Obstagoon also gets Parting Shot, Torracat gets Parting Shot. And then you have Togekiss already, which, I think it's probably the best. Well, I think Indeedee and Togekiss are probably the best Follow Me mon, the best redirection mons. And you already have so many Fake Out mons, so I think, them not having Tailwind is I don't think it matters really here. I think that this team is very well built, and it's got a lot of great flexible options, especially for setting up.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, I got nothing on this. You said it all.
Okay. All right, yeah, moving on to the Bolton Bashers.
Bolton Bashers, baby. Okay. Hello, Rillaboom. Once again, you're sitting on the number 2 team with a Comfey. And this team, we had a lot of talk, but I think the biggest thing we wanted to talk about that folks were also mentioning is about Comfey's healing move. What is it called again? I'm trying to remember.
Floral Healing?
Floral Healing does what? 66%?
I think it's like 2/3. Yeah, at least.
Yeah. It does.
In grassy terrain, right?
Yeah, 2/3 healing in grassy terrain, which that's a big deal. That's a really big deal when it comes to using Comfey in grassy terrain with some of these Pokemon that really do benefit from getting healed up after taking a hit. So I love to see there is a fantasy core. Alteria's really, it's tier 5, and it's not the best dragon type, but you know what? Cloud9, it does come in handy.
Tailwind, right?
Say that again.
I think it's Tailwind as well, right?
I actually don't know off the top of my head.
I'm
I don't want to say yes.
Okay, well let me double check that real quick.
Feel free to.
Yeah,
to
it gets Tailwind. It gets
Okay,
Tailwind.
cool.
So that's a pretty nice pickup then.
It gets
also gets
Tailwind.
Perish Song.
It gets and that's a huge endgame mechanic as well.
Yeah, Tailwind,
Archeop's pickup
Perish
is interesting for sure because Defeatist is always an ability that kind of you never want to accept that you have Defeatist, but you know what? It's there.
Yeah. Funnily enough, yeah, that's my biggest issue with the team is the Archeops, but we can get to that later.
For sure. You've got a really solid fire type, really solid grass type, and even for a water type, Claritzer with Mega Launcher does really big damage under the right circumstances. Golurk is really funny. No Guard's really great. Iron Fist as well. It's a ground type, so it's always great to have a ground type on the team. Kangaskhan is a fantastic pickup for a fake out user. Magnezone is obviously going to be pulling its weight with some powerful attacks. Pangoro, also a fantastic dark fighting type. This team overall has a really diverse range of typings. And we looked at it and we said, wow, that is really, really cool to see because it gives you so many different options when it comes to swapping in and out against any type of opponent. And you've got Slowking Galar for Trick Room as well. But really, in the end, this comes down to the fact that you've got Rillaboom. You've got a way to heal up Rillaboom and other Pokemon on your team really quickly. Slowking can obviously take advantage of the fact that it's the Galarian Slowking, so Curious Medicine's really cool. Regenerator's obviously always going to be good. Magnetar can definitely be an offensive powerhouse under Trick Room. Magnezone can as well. even Pangoro and Golurk. So like a lot of these Pokemon do love what's going on the field when you have the right combination and the right core setup. You've got two really great fake out users, so pretty much anything can get set up, as I said before, between Kangaskhan and Rillaboom. Yeah, I feel like I've said everything that I can say about this. Cortex, please fill in the cracks here, because I know there's a little bit more.
For sure, yeah. So Comfy can also set up Trick Room too, so they have that option as well.
Oh my god, how can I forget? I use this Pokemon myself so much. Oh my goodness.
No worries. Yeah, so I think, so if I put my finger on the Archeops, like if I cover the Archeops on my screen and I look at the rest of the team, I'm like, wow, that looks like such a well-rounded, bulky team, especially, the Comfy healing back every single member is going to be absolutely insane. And then I lift my finger and I see the Archeops and I'm like, what the heck is that doing there? Because I don't even think that that's going to be able to, maybe I'm trashing on the Archeops too much here. But because and I'm just doing it because I like the rest of the team so much.
Yeah.
So, I got to find something, right? And so I think that, the floral healing, I don't think it's really going to come into play with the Archeops for a couple reasons, especially with the 2/3 thing. For one, really the grassy terrain has to be active already in order for the floral healing to be able to do 2/3 healing back. And if you're just using it for 50%, I don't think it's as strong. And if Archeops, look at Archeops' defensive stats. I just want to pull that up really quick. So Archeops has got 75, 65, 65. So, it's going to get taken out by a medium gust of wind, right? I don't know if it's going to live. I don't know if it's going to live long enough to be able to take advantage of any healing capabilities. I think it's most likely to be knocked out in one shot. I think you'd have to run Sash in order to take advantage of that. But then you're going to be at defeatist range anyway. So is Sash even worth it at that point? And then you'd have to bring in Comfy at a point where you can heal back up. So I can maybe see, leading Comfy, Sash, Archeops, maybe you're able to get a good Rock Slide or something. Archeops gets taken down to Sash, and then, next turn you heal it back up. But and it gets Tailwind too, and it's, it's a decent Tailwind setter for the speed tier that it's in. But I think if it gets Tailwind up, then it's not going to be able to take advantage of its huge attack stat, because it's probably going to be taking in a good attack in the same turn and not living long enough to get off that second attack, right? Or it's going to be in defeatist range. So I think that's probably my biggest issue with the team. I think the Archeops is kind of out of place. I'm not sure that it's worth it for the tier that it's in. What I will say is I would love for a transaction to be made here. A perfect fit, I think, for this team. And I told you about this earlier, Ryan, would be Dragonite. Dragonite?
Ooh, yeah.
Now, hear me out on this one. Not only does it complete the fantasy core in addition to the Firewater Grass that they already have, but Dragonite has amazing synergy with Comfey in the fact that it gets multi-scale and it can be healed back up to full for multi-scale to go back into effect.
Crazy.
And not only that, you have Dragonite has the ability to set up with Dragon Dance alongside Rillaboom or Kangaskhan, right, with Fake Out.
Yep.
And then not only that, but Comfey can actually proc Dragonite's weakness policy, and it won't do too much because of multi-scale if you're running that. And then that's a lot of damage right from the get-go. They can't even be redirected, right, or faked out. And if you go Inner Focus Dragonite and Triage Comfey, and you go Draining Kiss attack move, you can't even fake out either of them. Comfey's because Comfey's going first before fake out, and not Dragonite because it's Inner Focus.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I would love to see a trade for that happen, especially given the fact that Dragonite's still on the board. Might be something, that's just my 2 cents for this draft. But other than that, I think it's a very solid draft. I like it a lot. And yeah, I think the Mons work together really nicely here. It's very bulky, I think, like every Mon here can definitely pull its weight. It has it's very, it has the stats. I think this team really brings the stats. I think whereas some of the other teams, they're forced to take up some tier 5 picks like Pincurchin or Mawile or Munchlax or Grookey or Thwackey or Combuskin, right? All of these Mons are the fully evolved forms, and they bring the stats. And I think that's pretty big with the grassy terrain and the healing capabilities that this team has.
Well said. I think the Bashers can truly have a bash if they pick up that Dragonite We'll see if they listen. If they get this far in the video, then they may get that. So we'll see. We'll see.
Oh, I mean, maybe the Archeops will end up working out for them too. You never know. Maybe because it is a fast L1 mon, it has some things going for it. So we'll have to see.
It's true. Okay, number 1, Westside Weasels. I'm doing a W on camera right now. Westside, baby. Westside. Westside Weasels. Cortex. Yeah, I know you love this team. Take it away, my dude.
All right, sounds good, man. So I look at this team, and those first 5 mons, I'm like, wow, that's such a good core right there. I feel like I could just put, you know how I mentioned putting my finger, my thumb over Archeops in the last one?
Yeah.
So I could put my whole hand over half this team and probably just take those 5 into battle every week. And I would feel pretty confident that I could pull out some kind of W with the combination of smart play using those 5, right? So that's how confident I am in the power of this core right here. I think the coach of this draft did a really good job. You got your sand mode. Obviously that's very powerful bolt beaks. Tangrowth for redirection really helps to cover Gigalith's weaknesses to water and grass there. And then Milotic, great water type to round that out, especially with the competitive ability to be able to deter any Intimidate away from Dracozolt and Gigalith. If you lead wrong, that thing's going to be at +2. It's going to be a nasty threat. And then Dusknoir, I think, is fantastic as well because it really enables the Trick Room component of that team. And then Dusknoir, I think, is also a force to be reckoned with now that it has Poltergeist. And I think you got some great damage mitigation options as well. And some great longevity as well. Like Dusknoir gets Pain Split, Tangrowth gets Regenerator, and I believe Synthesis as well. Not that you would be using Synthesis with Sand. And then Milotic gets Recover, right? And Coil. So I think that this kind of combo right here, if you play it well, I think it can really carry you in a lot of weeks. And you remember how we talked about earlier, whereas people can prepare for the same thing over and over, and that reduces the value a little bit. I think back to that Rain team, right, that we talked about with Politoed, Kingdra, and Incineroar. Well, I think the difference with this team is that there is variability for sets here. Like Dusknoir gets a wide variety of coverage moves, so it's not always going to be doing the same thing. Same with Milo, right? You can run Specs Milo, you can run Life Orb, you can run the Coil Hypnosis set, you can run, a speed control set with Icy Wind. Dracozolt gets a lot of coverage. You can pretty confidently expect Bolt Beak, but other than that, you could actually run even Hustle on it if you needed the extra firepower for a certain week.
For sure.
And you can run it Band or Scarf. And then Gigalith, you could run, you're probably always going to run Sandstream. There might be a week where maybe Sturdy is good in a certain matchup, and then you can use Synthesis Tangrowth if you so wanted to. And now speaking to the rest of the team, I think that there's some good options here as well. Like Fletchender, I would love for a better fire type to have been picked up than Fletchender. I don't know that Fletchender is going to be doing a whole lot of fire type damage output. That being said, Dracozolt gets some fire options. Dusknoir, I think, gets Fire Punch as well. I could be wrong on that. Exploud gets Flamethrower. Hatterene gets Mystical Fire, but not a whole lot of great fire damage. But they do have that Gale Wings Tailwind, so that could be useful for Dracozolt, Milo, and Exploud, maybe Rotom as well. And it can still do some other stuff like Will-O-Wisp. Linoon Galar, I think, is probably maybe one of the weaker points of the team for me. I know it doesn't get Belly Drum and Extreme Speed like the regular Linoon does, so. But it is a Dark type, and that might help out with the Dusknoir, Ghost moves going into it, as well as it being normal type. I think Purloin is an okay pickup here. It gets Brinkster. It's kind of, I would just treat it as like a. Lightport is typically Sash anyway, right? Lightport probably usually gets taken out in one hit down to its Sash. So Purloin, I guess, is kind of effectively the same thing. So I think that's okay. There's a little bit of anti-synergy with Sandstream going on, although, I think that this person ran Eviolite Purloin their week 1, and then ended up working pretty nicely for them. So that's cool. Rotom Frost, it's good. I know Blizzard is a little bit unreliable, so. But despite the fact, it's still a solid mon. It's still Rotom. Rotom is a great mon stat-wise. Gets Light Screen and Will-O-Wisp. Still able to hit fairly for fairly decent damage. I like the X-Cloud pick in tier 5. I think that's very good value, especially with Boom Burst and Hyper Voice, and a damage boosting item like Specs. You can really pop off next to Dusknoir, for example. And then Hatterene, I think this was a tier 1 pick, right, Ryan?
It is, and I think it's the one thing that we said, wow, look at those top 5 Mons on the left side of of your screen right now. And then look at Hatterene as their tier 1 pick and go, they literally could swap that out with anything faster, and then you could have 6 Mons that you bring pretty much every single week, right? I feel like we talked about, there are some Mons that are better or worse without Max. Hatterene is one of those Pokemon that really likes Max because it gets more HP and it stays on the field longer, and it'll also get Terrain. Without Psychic Terrain, you're not able to abuse Expanding Force. Yes, you can still abuse the very, very high special attack with Dazzling Gleam. Steady and solid fairy type damage like that is always great. And there is a Trick Room mode with this team, because correct me if I'm wrong, Dusknoir does get Trick Room, and Gigalith, Tangrowth, and Hatterene would make for a nasty combination, even Exploud being in there as well. So there's definitely merit for it, but looking at that compared to the rest of the team, it sticks out just a little bit to me.
Yeah, I think the Hatterene is solid for the team. I think it's great for the Trick Room mode. You bring something like Milotic, Dracozole, Gigalith, Tangrowth, Dusknoir, Hatterene. That's a very solid 6 right there. That being said, I feel like maybe they could have prioritized another fire type, and maybe changed out the Fletchinder for something else. If they wanted something else for Trick Room, I think they could have picked it up in the Fletchinder slot. And then, because I actually looked at the draft order for this team because I was just curious. And this team actually could have drafted Arcanine over Hatterene, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
And so imagine this team with Milo, Dracozole, Gigalith, Tangrowth, Dusknoir, and Arcanine. How strong that would have been in terms of longevity, hanging around, damage mitigation, and you can run any of those Mons like offensively as well. So like I'm just thinking like that would be such a scary team to go against, right? Because now you got the Fire, Water, Grass, and then Arcanine, Intimidate with all of that. I'm sure there's that this person could even have gone like I'm trying to think what tier 1 fire types are still available, or even tier 2 fire types. I know Blaziken is an interesting pick because they have the Tangrowth already. Normally I wouldn't suggest Blaziken, but I think in this team it would work because they have redirection already, so they can go Swords Dance Blaziken, and then it's just naturally gaining speed, and then they have powerful fire and fighting moves. But I think that being said, I think that the Hatterene does work for them. And yeah, I think it's a great team. I mean, we put it number 1 for a reason, right?
Yeah. It's
so yeah.
Go for it.
Oh, that's it. That's all I had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in this draft league, if I had to recount all the previous teams and what was coming in first and beyond that, it's funny to see Sand kind of regarded as like just a really solid option for a lot of teams, and most of it actually coming from either Gigalith or Hippowdon, which is interesting. It's fun to see, or it's going to be fun to see like what weathers can prove themselves to be the best, because you can look at other formats and you can be like, oh, well, in this metagame, this was really good, or in this metagame, this was really good. But overall, rock types really benefit from a good sand stream. And so if you can put yourself in a position to get sand up and kind of just let it chip down your opponents, the more damage, the better. And that's why I really like X-Blood on this team too. With Scrappy, Boom Burst is just able to kind of just do really consistent, powerful damage. And I mean, there's just so many Pokemon on this team that have the ability to do that. Muddy Water is not the most accurate move, but if it hits on a Melodic that's been boosted due to its competitive ability, like that's a big deal. Dracozole can do huge damage. Rock Slide from Gigalith can be really big. And like you said, Poltergeist on Dusknoir. I mean, almost every Pokemon has an item, so it's gonna be a move that you use. because almost everything has something on it. Overall, this team is really solid, and we thought it deserved the #1 spot in the power rankings for this division. So overall, come into the overall rankings left to right here.
Just want to say really quick, Ryan,
Yeah,
if I
please.
may. I think for these top three teams here, I think that these were also really close.
Yes.
In rankings, I think so. The middle was close, and then there was a little bit of a distinction there. But I think the top three teams are all pretty close as well. So, I had a challenging time with that too.
For sure. Yeah, well said, man. We look at both of these divisions, and while there is a 1 to 12, type hierarchy that is built here, by no means does that excuse the fact that Pokemon is a game of luck and also a game of skill. So we could be giving a team the highest power ranking, but you know what? Anyone could be proven at any time that something could be done to change that, or to prove us wrong, essentially, because last season, I think, really opened my eyes to seeing so many different strategies play out. And Cortex knows, because I was telling or ranting at him about all said things that were being used on me last season that would catch me off guard or just kind of put me in a bind that I wasn't expecting. And so I expect many teams, no matter what their position, to really prove themselves, whether it's the team, the player, luck, whatever. It's going to be a good time, and that's what this is really all about, just having a good time and enjoying yourself, because if you're not, why are you playing the game in the first place?
Yeah, well said, Ryan. Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me here. I hope you guys enjoyed the power rankings, and yeah, excited to play you guys and see how these power rankings shape up to be for the season.
It's going to be a great time. So glad that you could join us, Cortex, and be a part of what we're doing here, because it's going to be a lot of fun. Folks, if you enjoyed these rankings, let us know below. Give us your takes. Did you agree with us? Did you disagree with us? Let us know in the comments below, because we're always wanting to start conversation on this sort of thing. For now, my name is Ryan. I'm with Cortex here. We'll be back in the future with more content, I'm sure. But have a great night, day, afternoon, whatever time you're watching this, and I'll see you later. Thank you.